All right, good evening. We are about to get busy with the first meeting of the year for the East Lansing Human Rights Commission meeting, 1/6/2021. We got a lot to do. We got to re-vote for chair and vice chair for the year. We'll be going over some police reform referendums. We'll be talking a little bit about kind of really what our goals are and some other things that will be action-packed, hopefully, for our meeting, and will be efficient and quick. So thanks for joining me and appreciate you. We're about 3 or 4 minutes before we get started, so hold tight as usual, and we'll get this thing rocking and rolling.
It was nice. We're healthy. We're good. Thank you. So I enjoyed them. How about you, Liz?
Well, the Christmas Eve was really weird because no church, which is like the main event for me for my holidays.
Oh, but it's the busiest time of the year.
Yeah, it was very weird. But the actual Christmas day, it's always just me and my wife, and we maybe travel out here. For
Christmas Day felt normal.
Yeah, and it was really nice having some time at home afterwards. I miss my family, but it was a good break.
Yeah, that seems to be a very similar message. We've stayed close to home, missed family, but enjoyed the downtime, really.
Yeah, as long as it's not every year.
Exactly, right. Quentin is here. Hello, Quentin.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hi, Dawson.
Hello, everyone.
I see everyone is here but Pat. I haven't heard from Pat.
And as usual, Justin, I'll wait for you to give me the cue for the delay there. So we'll be staring at each other for a quick second there.
Of course. We'll just give it just another 30 seconds to get to 6:30, and then we'll be off to the races.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, we are live.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to the East Lansing Human Rights Commission meeting of 2021. It is 6:30, January 6th. Thank you all for joining us. And can we please go into roll call?
Sure, and just as a reminder, I ask the commissioners when you indicate your presence, please what city you're currently in and what county that is as well, so we can comply with that policy. Pat Cannon? Do not see Pat yet. Chuck Grigsby?
Present, East Lansing, Ian County, Michigan.
Kieran Honey?
Present, Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Liz Miller?
Present, East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Crystal Davis Dunn?
Present, East Lansing, Ingham County, Michigan.
Catherine Mafiota Slavinsky?
East Lansing, Clinton County, Michigan.
Austin Sardar?
East Lansing, Ingham County, Michigan.
And Quentin Tyler?
Lexington, Kentucky, Fayette County.
Great. Thank you. Carla McWhirter indicated that she wouldn't be able to attend this evening.
You want me to give Pat a call just in case he missed the fact it's at 6:30?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tossin, for that extra
I
there.
appreciated the reminder email, Shelley, or I would have forgotten myself. So.
Me too.
All right, thank you. We have quorum so far, and hopefully we'll get Pat in here as well here in a minute or two. So we'll just move to item 1.2, approval of the agenda for today, January 6, 2021. I hope everyone has had a chance to look at that, and I'll entertain the motions for that approval.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Catherine. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Honey. Is there any discussion in regards to the agenda? Good. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Just if we're going to do the vote in this manner, if you don't mind, please raise your hand at least as well with the verbal confirmation so I can recognize you, just to make sure everything is clean. So I'll ask for that again. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it so passes. And I'll go to item 1.3, approval of the minutes for 12/20/20, which seems so long ago. Assuming everyone had a chance to kind of look at that information and no abbreviations or changes to that, I'll look for a approval of the minutes.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the meeting on December 2nd, 2020.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner
I have
Honey.
Question?
Go ahead.
Oh,
I'm just fading out again, your voice.
I was just wondering what the SLN at the very end of the minutes signify.
Those are my initials.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's just your signature. That's not okay. Sounds good.
Thank you. So is there a second to the motion to approve the minutes? Okay,
I'll second it.
seconded by Commissioner Catherine. Is there any more discussion on that? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? I didn't see Commissioner Vice Chair Davis Dunn. Were you in favor of the minutes as well?
Sorry, I was having some computer difficulties, right? But I, yes, I guess in favor.
All right. All right.
I'm trying to catch up with you guys.
All
Sorry.
right. All right. So move. Are you with us now? Are you all caught up, you think?
My agenda had disappeared. And so it's fine. I will catch up.
Okay. Just go ahead and give us a wave just in case you have any continued issues. We'll slow it down or make sure that you got that going. Because I know a couple people talked about having some internet issues. So no worries on that end. We'll move on to item 1.4. Before we move to item 1.4, I would like to recognize Commissioner Cannon here, if you don't mind, so he can say his presence officially to the meeting. If you don't mind, Commissioner Cannon.
I am present in East Lansing, Ingham County, Michigan.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Pleased to be here.
Thank you for
Welcome, Pat.
Thank you for joining us. All right, we'll move to item 1.4. We have the election of officers. We'll go with item A under that item of 1.4, and we will open it up for nominations for chair position. I'm looking for any nominations for anyone who would like to be considered doing the chair.
Can
Yes.
I just ask, since this is my first cycle of elections, I just want to make sure. So, can anyone nominate anyone? And then is there an acceptance process? And then is the voting open? I just kind of want to get a little overall of how it's done.
Yes, that's correct. And correct me if I mess it up, Mrs. Newman, but yes, anyone can nominate anyone to this situation. And then what was the second part of that?
So is there a speech as in how the voting is done?
Oh, yeah. So then that person, if who's nominated accepts, and then we'll move on to a vote based on how the process works. Did I leave anything out, Mrs. Newman?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you didn't mention the nominating speech the person needs to make on their behalf.
I hope we're joking with that because I'm not quite sure that any of us are prepared for a speech tonight.
I just made that up.
Gotcha. Is there any more questions before we go back to the nomination process? Yes, Commissioner Catherine.
And how is the voting done? And is there any discussion about it?
The vote's pretty straightforward. We do a roll call vote for it, so we can make sure we have the numbers and people are identified. And that's the process from what I understand. Then we move on to the second part of this process. Got it? Any other questions about procedures? Good. So we'll go into opening up for nominations for chair starting tonight. So this person will be, expected to finish out the agenda tonight and so forth and so on. So I will open up the floor for anyone that wants to make any nominations. Yes, Commissioner Miller.
I would like to nominate you to continue as chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller.
Would you like to second that?
Just one quick second on that. Is there any other nominations? Yes, Vice Chair Davis Dunn.
I would like to make a nomination for myself for chair.
All right. Someone who has a little extra going on in the background, if you're not speaking, can you please mute if you don't mind? Are there any other nominations for chair out on the table? And I'll give you a quick moment to think about that. So we have a lot of processing to do when it comes to that. Okay. All right. So we'll move on and we will first find out if we accept the nomination. Vice Chair Davis Dunn, do you accept, I know you promoted yourself, but do you accept obviously the nomination? Yes, and I do as well. And I accept the nomination. And I think if there's no other nominations, last chance, we'll go into the vote. And then I'll let Shelley take over because we will do the roll call vote once we get to that point. Yes, Commissioner Catherine.
I would like to nominate Liz.
Liz?
I do not accept something.
So that takes care of that, Commissioner Catherine. Are there any other last second nominations? And again, you can nominate yourself if you so are interested in doing that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Did someone say something? Okay, so we'll go back into Shelley. I think I'll let you take over. I don't know how you want to do it, but I know it'll be a roll call vote. And just to clear things up from the last meeting, the nominated persons are able to vote and participate in the vote. Yes, Commissioner Honey.
Do the nominations need a second, or is that not necessary?
I don't think they do. Am I wrong about that? Okay. Yeah, no, I don't think they do. We just need to accept it and then we'll go from that. And then there's no seconds needed for once the vote actually goes through. So it's just pretty straightforward. And we'll do the same thing for the vice chair once we get there. Yes, Commissioner Catherine.
Sorry, so no discussion whatsoever. We're just going into roll call.
Correct. Unless you want to bring something forward right now in your discussion, you're more than welcome to have comments.
Well, not if it's not a discussion, right? I don't want to impose.
Yeah, but you're more than allowed. I think everyone's okay with it, but you're more allowed to have any comments, statements, anything. It's not that serious where we can't just speak. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair.
Just one quick second, Commissioner Cannon. Yes, go ahead, Catherine. Go ahead and finish up your thought.
So I just wanted to ask the two nominees for chair, what do they envision for the committee in this year, if that's allowed?
Yeah, I mean, it's allowed. I think it would probably best be served for time once the chair is actually voted in, that they could maybe talk about it for a second or two. But that's just my minority opinion on it. But it's kind of up to you guys, and we can address that if you'd like to do that.
I think it would be helpful to open discussions as to reasons why people are interested in running for any elected position.
Sounds good. I'll let Commissioner Cannon go ahead and go with his question or statement, and then we can jump into that if you like. Please go ahead, Commissioner Cannon.
Just a question: when we do vote, are we going to be voting by raising the Zoom hand, or just by announcing our preferred candidate?
It'll be a roll call vote, so
Okay.
your name will be called and you'll be asked on your particular position on
I
that.
can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Davis Dunn, did you want to address Commissioner Catherine's question in regards to what your plans are if nominated for chair?
Would you mind going first? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say continue the work we've been doing for the last year and a half here, and just stay with the focus of what we've been doing and evolving as we go forward. That's my ideal plan. Really, it's not really my mission, my journey. It's our journey, our mission, and it's really what the group wants to do and how we want to focus going forward. And really, I see the chair position as a facilitator of those ideas, passions, and interests. So individually, I just want to continue to working. We got a lot done. It was an incredible last year of work. We got everything that has really addressed some of our mandate in regards to reform, representing protected classes. We really have had an outstanding year doing that. And I'm very proud to have been working with all of you in regards to get some of these things done that we have sent up to council and has been passed and enacted in our community. So I just want to continue doing that. And that's all I'd say to that question, Commissioner Catherine.
And I'm sorry, your question was what? Sorry, can you restate your question?
Yeah, it was, what do you envision, if elected chair to this position? What are the things that you want to work on, or any suggestions and plans for this upcoming year?
I guess I individually text everyone, kind of my spill and my why of wanting to put a bid in for chair. I would say my ditto as to like my vision for what the work of the commission is to continue to allow the great works that has been happening here. I feel that during my tenure as a commissioner here, I see opportunities to become better structured and more proficient in our execution of things. And I would like the opportunity to help facilitate the structuring of that framework so that when we do have turnover within leadership or members, that the work can continue. There have been moments where, things have been voted on or moved upon and over time have been forgotten about, even creating some traditional practices of the HRC, even looking at some of the priorities that the members voted on at, engaging with the community, providing educational opportunities and things of that sort. And I think those things kind of got lost or were forgotten with their T hours and other things that was happening in the past. And so, my vision is to continue to support the great works and initiatives of the commission, but again, to provide a container or a structure so that the work continues and it doesn't dies as members leave.
Thank you. Well said, Vice Chair Davis Dunn. Thank you. All right. I think we'll go ahead and go into the vote there, Mrs. Shelley. I know I see Mrs. Newman, probably Shelley. We'll go ahead and let you go ahead and take over.
So we will do a roll call vote, and when I call your name, I think the easiest way would be just to indicate if you would vote, if your vote is with Chuck or if it's with Crystal, just indicate by their first name. Starting with Pat.
Chuck.
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 Chuck Grigsby.
Oh, you're asking me. You're actually asking me.
Yes.
Chuck.
Kieran Honey.
Karen, you are mute.
Muted? Chuck? Did you hear that?
Yes, thank you. Liz Miller.
Chuck.
Crystal Davis Dunn.
You're muted.
She's on mute too.
Crystal, you're muted. Crystal. Catherine Raffiota Slavinsky.
Crystal.
Austin Zarder.
Chuck.
And Quentin Tyler.
Chuck.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So the majority is Chuck Grigsby.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in the vote, and thank you for your interest in wanting to do your thing here with us, Commissioner Dunn. We really do appreciate you and the things that you do bring to the table. All right, so we'll move on to item 1.4B, and we will look for nominations for vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Commissioner Cannon, please.
Yes, I would be pleased to nominate Liz for vice chair. She's been on the HRC for a while, has a good understanding of what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And she has the maturity and insight that will serve us well from that position. So I know, Liz, you turned down the first nomination. I hope you'll be considering this one more favorably.
That was a great speech for a nomination.
Thank you, Commissioner Cannon. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Yes, Commissioner Catherine.
I'd like to nominate Crystal. I think she's been doing a great job in the position and kind of really being vocal and at the forefront of a lot of initiatives. So I nominate her as vice chair.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations outside of Crystal and Liz? That'll be the rare time I use their first names, but are there any other nominations? And again, you are able to nominate yourself if you choose to. Were you about to say something, Commissioner Sardar?
No.
Okay, I apologize. Commissioner Catherine, if there's no more nominations, did you want to hold the vice chairs to the same standard of about possibly what their goals are or how they see themselves doing that? Would that be something? Something you want to?
Like a continuous election thing. I'd love to. Yes.
If they're comfortable with doing that, I have no worries with that. I don't think anyone else does.
If both of them accept, yes.
All right. So would you like to say a couple of 2 words, Commissioner Miller?
Well, we haven't accepted our nomination.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. This is a big deal process, so I apologize for that. So do you accept the nomination for vice chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis Dunn, do you accept the nomination for vice chair?
Yes.
Thank you. And then going back to Commissioner Miller, if you don't mind, if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, do you have anything you would like to share in regards to the vice chair?
Yeah, I think Pat offered some very kind words, which I really appreciate. And I think the vice chair role is unique in that it's sort of supports both the commission and the chair. And I think I made great in the supporting role of both of those things. And would really look forward to teamwork with the chair, bouncing ideas off and bringing us back to sort of our larger goals, purposes, and tying that in with the work that has already been done.
Thank you. Vice Chair Davis Dunn, would you like to speak in regards to the Vice Chair?
Yes, and thank you, Liz, for that comment. Again, I think me and Chuck was elected in August, and that was my first committee meeting or commission meeting. And from that time, and I still continue to revisit our ordinances and things that pertains to our commission, so I can better understand the workings of how decision flows and decisions are made, or anyways to that regard. But to the point that Commissioner Liz made of working and supporting the commission and various other commissions and the chair as well, what I've struggled to find within these roles are clear definitions or defined duties. And so and that's been a goal of mine as a part of this commission, is to have clear understanding of each individual's roles, responsibilities, and duties. I do feel that as vice chair, I have continued to support the initiatives of the commission and the chair to the best of my ability, as well as highlight opportunities or gaps within our structure functioning that we can improve upon, again, so that we can be more proficient in our work. And so I would like to continue in that initiative with shaping the structure in order for us to have kind of clear expectations of roles and supporting roles, so that we're able to kind of press forward with more execution of the priorities that we identified as a commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis Dunn. And I get you. Both of you are wonderful candidates, and I'll just say that I know that Commissioner Miller, you have been doing this. I've learned a lot from you. I continue to do that, and so I just appreciate you guys' comments in regards to that. So I think I'll open it up. If there is no last minute statements, comments, questions, or nominations to Shelley Newman.
Okay, once again, we'll do roll call vote and just indicate by saying whether your vote is Liz or Crystal. Pat Cannon.
I vote for Liz.
Thank you. Chuck Grigsby.
Liz.
Thank you. Karen Honey.
Liz.
Liz Miller.
Liz.
Thank you. Crystal Davis Dunn.
Crystal.
Thank you. Catherine Rifiota Slavinsky.
Crystal.
Thank you. Austin Sardar.
Liz.
Thank you. And Quentin Tyler.
Liz.
Thank you. So our vice chair is Liz Miller.
Congratulations, Vice Chair Miller, and thank you also everyone participating. These are not easy decisions. We all work together. We all have something to bring to the table, and so I hope that we can continue doing that and keep churning out that work that we had mentioned earlier going forward. And I'll go ahead and move on if there's no questions, comments, or statements.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Cannon.
Yep. I'd just like to make a comment to you, Chuck. You know that I voted for you, so I'm supportive of what you've been doing. While I didn't vote for Crystal as our vice chair, I wanted to thank her for her work over the last 4 months, and I hope you'll consider running for chair and vice chair positions in the future.
Thank you.
Well said, Commissioner Cannon. I second that. Any other comment statements before we move on?
And Chuck, this is Ron. With my council comments, can you move me up in the agenda? I'm in a tough location to get off after comments.
Absolutely. Do you think it'd be okay if we, we'll get you in right now, and we'll just get that moved around so we can get you taken care of. Is that okay?
Great, thank you.
All right. Is there any other quick comments in regards to item 1.4? Okay, good. So as you guys have all heard, we're going to take item 5.1 and unofficially bring it up to, for the sake of adhering to our liaison. I hope everyone's okay with that. If anyone isn't, please let me know. All right, so we'll go ahead and open up to Councilmember Bacon's commissioner comments. Excuse me, councilman comments.
No, just a happy new year to everyone. I just wanted to express, I got some negative feedback on our last meeting on the process of the time change. Just via the kind of our purpose as a human rights commission and kind of the moms in that scenario. People felt they were a little bit boxed in and kind of majority ruled out on that a little bit, and just wanted to, there were some appearances and some things that did come back too positive from just that were reflected to me. I just wanted to express them to the group, and perhaps in consideration of that, because they were in the minority, but didn't really have the voting power to do anything about that minority. I think maybe there's some consideration should be put around that timing and for the moms in that group, because there was a little bit of negative feedback, and I know that's not anything we want, particularly with our what we're designed to do, to be reflected in any way, shape, or form. So I know that kind of majority rule didn't sit well with some people, and it may be something to be revisited by the commission. So just wanted to present that to you.
Is that all you have for commissioner comments or councilman comments?
Yeah, that's all I have.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yes, Vice Chair Miller.
Yeah, I just want to thank Councilmember Bacon for bringing that up. And could we bring that up in our commissioner comments as a item later on so that we can just make a point to revisit that?
Yes, Vice Chair Miller. Yeah, just go ahead and, just in case I miss it, please remind us, and we can tackle that and look at that as a commission. No worries on that at all. Yes, Commissioner Catherine.
Since there's no rule on this, could we at some point make a motion to agree that any time changes have to be unanimous?
We can address that a little bit later on in regards to, when we have the bigger discussion and see where we get with that. If you don't mind holding on to that idea, please don't lose it. And we'll revisit that if you don't mind. Thank you. All right. Anything else to Councilmember Bacon, or excuse me, Councilmember Bacon and his comments to the group? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item 2.1 to public comment. Justin, is there anyone on the line by chance?
Yes, we have a couple of public comments.
Okay.
Folks in the queue tonight.
Okay. So previously we've adopted the MCL I can't remember the numbers here, to limiting public comment to 5 minutes, as you guys are all familiar with. And I'm not quite sure if you want to enact that or if you want to kind of let it go, but I will open it up to see if anyone has any comments in regards to enforcing that or not enforcing it in regards to our calls tonight.
Do we know how many calls we have?
I think 2.
There are currently 2.
And personally, I feel that I don't see anyone going super longer than 5 minutes with only 2 people waiting. I'm okay with just moving forward and letting them go ahead and make their comments. I'm open to limiting it to 5 minutes as well, but with only 2 callers, I'm comfortable just moving forward with comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Honey, and I'm kind of in with you. Unless there's someone who has a time restriction tonight or is concerned about that, we'll go ahead and allow the callers to call in and just speak freely. Did you have something to say, Commissioner Cannon?
Yes, I too support the notion of a 5-minute limit.
You do support the notion of having a 5-minute limit? Is that correct?
Yes, that's the same thing you said, Karen, right?
I was actually saying, Pat, that since tonight there's only 2 callers, that I'm okay with letting them just speak freely. I think that people generally tend to keep their comments relatively short, but I could go either way. That was just my thought with only 2 callers.
Okay. The primary reason I support 5 minutes, and I've been on lots of boards and commissions and chaired many of them. If you don't have a time limit, then you don't have many checks or balances. When you have someone who becomes a chronic commenter and says, wait, one more thing, and they wound up talking for 25 minutes. So I think a 5-minute limit is fair. And if there are extenuating circumstances, the person could always ask for another minute or two.
Support past comments.
Are there any other comments to Commissioner Cannon's desire? Shelley, do you have the MCL so we can officially refer to what that is and the 5 minutes of what it's pertaining to? It wasn't on the agenda.
I believe Justin might have it.
Yes, it's MCL 15.263 subsection 1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to probably have to do a vote on that to see what everyone wants to do with that. If we want to adopt that to limiting public comment tonight for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, the question of process, I thought we already supported that at our last meeting, or do you intend to check with us on that time limit at each meeting?
I have gotten the habit of asking every meeting in regards to the 5 minutes and just citing it. For some reason, when I created the agenda, I didn't have it cited on there. So I apologize for the confusion in what's going on. But yes, I have used that and you mentioned that each time we've had public comment section going forward.
Yeah. And you know that Ron and I support 5 minutes.
Okay. Is there a motion on the floor to that limiting comment to 5 minutes and recognizing the role?
Pat Cannon moves.
Moved by Commissioner Cannon. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Sardar. Is there any more discussion in regards to limiting public comment to 5 minutes? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, seeing none, we'll limit public comment to 5 minutes pursuant to what Justin referred to in the ordinance, and we'll open it up.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. The first caller is phone number ending in 753. Phone number ending in 753. You may unmute and address the commission.
Hello. So we are limited to 5 minutes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, we are limited to 5 minutes. Oh, shoot. Okay. I don't think that will leave me enough time to contest Mr. Cannon's points about a 5 minute time limit. So I guess I'll save that for next week. I have other things I got to address. I'd like to preface by saying it's a wild day for this first meeting to fall on. I'm sure all of you saw what was going on the news, and it's interesting to think that now in 2020 the Lansing and the greater Lansing community played a what is going to go down as a pivotal role in the history of American democracy. What we're seeing today on the steps of the United States Capitol and unfortunately inside the United States Capitol is a product of well, it was all influenced by what happened in Lansing in May and in April. And I think that's something that we should take great note of going into this year and really reflect on our role in American history. And I know I've spoken to Crystal and Chuck about this murder that happened in Lansing, where there were origins of it that believed to come from East Lansing. And where we've been talking a lot about racial violence and the guise of law enforcement to target and terrorize Black citizens a lot in the past year. And this upcoming year is actually going to be a very disturbing anniversary in September. On September 28th of 2021, will mark 90 years since the murder of Earl Little in Lansing, Michigan. And he was murdered by the Black Hand, which was a Michigan subsidiary of the Ku Klux Klan. Many members of the Black Legion did live in East Lansing at this time. And in the past 90 years, there has never been any recognition from the city of Lansing in their role in the death of Earl Little, which would also result in the institutionalization of his wife, Louise Little. Maybe you all know who Louise and Earl Little are. Maybe you don't. If you don't, they are the parents of Malcolm X. And we love to celebrate Malcolm X in this community. We love to celebrate, his roots here and how he got married here and how his wife, Betty Shabazz, went to high school in this community. Yet we all shy away from the fact that we are the community that ripped Malcolm's family apart limb from limb. And I suppose I think that would be a good place to start this year's discussion, at least with the public, and how, if you feel that this committee could be utilized for some sort of research purpose as this anniversary is approaching, it will be important for this committee to recognize that anniversary in September. And I think this committee should have every fact and every piece of information that is still available to find at their disposal when we as a city make that recognition in September. So I'd like to get all of your opinions on what you think we could do as a city that has the consideration for human rights that this community does. What could we do about this upcoming anniversary?
Thank you, caller. Is that all that you have for your general comments?
Well, how much time do I have left?
I believe there was about a minute 15. I just want to make sure we get to the heart of what you wanted us to kind of address there.
Yeah, just for a little bit of extra clarity, I just wanted to make sure if anybody in the room didn't know who those people were, that now they know. But just for clarity as to who I am and my relation to it, I helped organize the March Against Fear in January on campus, and one of the demands to Michigan State University was to commission a memorial to Earl and Louise Little, because while they're both not just victims of institutional racism, they are also large figures in the greater story of civil rights progress in the United States of America. Both were large idealistic figures in the Pan-Africanism movement. If you've heard of Marcus Garvey, they were both close associates of his. And so this upcoming Monday, January 11th, I will be asking the city of Lansing to mine this upcoming anniversary. The city of Lansing needs to mine this upcoming anniversary, and I think they should build a memorial to Earl and Louise Little. But I also think East Lansing itself, while it is not where Earl and Louise Little lived or where Earl died, it is very possible that some of those responsible for the destruction to the Little family lived in this community, and we need to recognize that. So with that all in mind, I'd like to get your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Mr. Rushton. We appreciate your activism in the community and your insight and what you bring to the table. We always appreciate when we get people to call in and let us know what they're thinking. But I will open it up to the commission to see if anyone wanted to respond to the callers' questions. Yes, Commissioner Cannon.
Well, first, I thank you very much for bringing that subject to us to consider. Did you offer your name at the beginning? You don't have to, but I didn't know what your name was. So
his name was Ed Rushton.
Ed, thank you, Ed. He was killed in Lansing, wasn't he?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you brought this proposal to the Lansing City Council?
As I said, next Monday, January 11th, I will be bringing them a proposal.
Okay. I would like to think that if Lansing is willing to do something, I'd like to see us also partner in making a similar observance so it can be underscored. We'll wait to see what Lansing does with your proposal. You presented it well. I suspect they will be very, very supportive.
Thank you, Commissioner Cannon. Do any other commissioners want to address the caller? Yes, Commissioner Davis Dunn.
Thank you again for calling in and bringing awareness to the legacy of Earl Little and Malcolm X, and the legacy of the work that they did here and across the United States. And I think, from what I understand, the reason why presenting the information here at this commission is not necessarily to follow suit to see what another city response may be to acknowledging the death or the legacy or of the family or of this community. From what I understand is that in this era that we're in, it's about reconciliation and acknowledgement of the origin and the history. Even to the point of the stuff that we're dealing with Brookfield, in their covet and the language there. Like, this community, East Lansing is not, evolved from, the history of this place and in the events that happened. And I know many of it is not on record. Usually they don't document, lynchings and cross burnings and things and stuff that happened in that day to people of color. And I'm sure East Lansing has some stories. And so what I understand from, Ed calling in is asking us to be the leaders and to take action and set an example for our larger community to start making reconciliation of our ugly history that occurred here, and the legacy of the work that followed those individuals and what they represented in this community.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis Dunn. Any other comments from any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Tyler.
Yeah, like everybody else said, I appreciate the individual bringing this to our commission, but also, I think it's our responsibility to educate, inform, and bring awareness to things as well, because many of our members of this community are not from this area. So, I always believe that if we don't know our past, we tend to repeat it. So I definitely think it's important for us to acknowledge and bring awareness to inform those in this community and also in surrounding communities.
Thank you, Commissioner Tyler. Any other comments to the caller? I'll just say that I worked with Mr. Rushton over the summer. We were involved in the March Against Fear campaign, basically, and we really had a list of demands, not only for our community, but for Michigan State University. And, for me, there are a lot of things that have happened over there that we have not had a chance to really advocate in the best ability I think that we can going forward. And so, one of those things I think is also what Commissioner Tyler said, and a little bit of what Commissioner Davis Dunn said, is just kind of really getting our community educated and really getting the information out there about our history, about what our community is about. There's some very, very wonderful people who have been involved within our community, along with Malcolm X's family, and with MSU, and in our community here in East Lansing, that I could probably name 3 or 4 names and no one would know who they are, but they're very, very important people that really tie into where we came from to where we are now, in regards to showing that diversity of those types of people. There are a lot of buildings, parks, and monuments to a lot of people here in our community, but it's not diversified. And I got a chance to participate in the park renaming committee about 4 or 5 months ago, and that was a big topic about how representation matters. It's one thing to be, inclusive and want to have diversity, but you have to embrace it. And I think really getting is a first step, like I had talked about in our previous meeting, talking with Council Member Greg, and join up with the Arts Commission and really have representation in our community is one of the many things that I think will help, as Commissioner Tyler said, in regards to a lot of people who are in our community are not from this community. And it does repeat itself, unfortunately. So that'll be all that I say to that. Mr. Rushton knows that we have work to do. We'll continue doing what we do here in this format and outside this format. Any other comments from any other commissioners before we move on? Yes, Commissioner Honey.
Just like to add my support. Thank you, Edmund, for calling in. You always have a lot to teach us and let us know about. I'm particularly struck by what you said about the hypocrisy, about how we love to claim Malcolm X, but then we don't want to claim this other darker side of that. And so I do feel it's an appropriate role for our commission to bring attention, information, and tell stories and recognize folks that need to be recognized. So I'm very open to talking as a commission about moving forward about how we could honor your request. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you, Commissioner Honey. Well said. All right, I think we'll move on. If there's no other, oops, sorry, I was muted there. All right, I think we'll move on unless there's any other comments.
Yeah, I did have a comment. I was wondering, curious, Ed, if you had any recommendations. And I know Chair Grigsby talked about, the renaming of parks and even with art commissions. If you had any recommendations on how East Lansing or even, the HRC could do their part in bringing awareness and making sure that we're representation of pillars of our community.
Yes, I appreciate that question. Actually, I didn't quite get to that. I think a great place to start would be seeing if we have any city records from that era, the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, in terms of what kind of white supremacist organizational presence we had in this area. There was a Klan march in the Capitol in, I believe, 1924, in which there were tens of thousands of people attending. And a year ago, that would have sounded like a crazy idea to us, but I think after what we saw this year in Lansing, it doesn't sound so far-fetched, and it doesn't sound like whoever was responsible for that Klan march in 1924 entirely disappeared. I think there may be things to learn about exactly what the makeup of our community is today by looking at trying to figure out exactly what it looked like at the time when Earl Little was murdered. So I think just really my pursuits I suppose would be from a research standpoint. Like Commissioner Tyler said, if we don't know our history, we're doomed to repeat it.
All right, thank you. Thank you. We'll move on for the sake of time, and I really appreciate the caller's input, and thank you, commissioners, for participating in the conversation. Just a side note, I was just thinking, I'll move on real quickly, is that Commissioner Sardar sent me some information, and it really brought me home. When we talk about really representation, we talk about kind of really who we are. We do have a very diverse community of people, but we also are a border state to another country. And there's a lot of issues that come in from a lot of foreign students that come in and live in our community in a way that if not for that information, it would remind me some of the different things that I think as the HRC, there's also representation in that area as well. That's very, very important. And information is very, very important to get out in regards to those respects. So I'll leave it at that. And I think we'll move on to the next caller if we don't have any other comments. All right. Can we open it up to the second caller, please? Justin.
Yes, and just so you're aware, Chuck, there is another caller in the queue that joined during the public comment session, so this was not the last caller.
Thank you.
But we will, this person is joining via Zoom, so the name is Farhan.
Thank you.
And here we go. You guys hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
All right. Good evening. Happy New Year. I won't take too much time. I just wanted to say thank you guys for all of the incredible work that you guys have been doing the past few months. If you look back 11 months ago, East Lansing is in far better place today than it was 11 months ago, and that's because of your hard work and your determination and your commitment to make the city a better place. I want to thank all of you guys, and the job is not finished, and there's always going to be more work that needs to be done. And I have a lot of faith in this committee, in this commission. I have a lot of faith in all of you guys, And I look forward to working with you guys in 2021. We accomplished a lot together just past few months, and as I look back, it was sometime this February will mark the 1-year anniversary of Tito. Sometime in January, at the end of this month, it will mark the 1-year anniversary of Anthony Logan's Jr.'s case. So we have accomplished a lot. There's still more that needs to be accomplished, and I believe we are on the right path. And I just want to once again say thank you guys, and I hope you guys all keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Farhan. I know personally, I really appreciate those comments. Everyone on this commission are volunteers. We give up a lot of our time and energy towards what we got these chairs for in the first place. And so it's really nice to hear that every once in a while. I also want to just acknowledge you as well for being an advocate for change, a leader in issues that our community faces. You have done a tremendous amount of work, you and Mr. Rushton, as well as some others I can name off. But we appreciate you as well, and we appreciate your continued participation in our calls, in our work, and our mission. Any other commissioners want to make any comments or responses to the caller? All right, we'll move on to the next caller.
Okay, the next caller is phone number ending in 963. Again, that's 963.
Hi, this is Alice Drager. I'll try to be really brief. Last night, I asked the City Council, as I have so many times with so many City Councils, to try to improve the situation with transparency in the city. My most immediate experience was not specifically related to, I think, some of what you're going to be dealing with, which is much more serious, but dealing with the incredibly poor noticing of the Cdbg hearing that was, I think, purposely sandwiched between Christmas and New Year's to draw attention away from it. There was no public notice issued anywhere except apparently on paper somewhere, some newspaper somewhere. And the posting of it on the city's website was incredibly deceptive is the word I would use. It was posted under a name that would give you no clue what it was really about. Cdbg funding relates to HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development money for low and moderate income housing. It's for poor people. And it's the funding we keep using to spend on other things, mainly on amenities for upper middle class people. And having that particular hearing buried and named something that was incredibly unclear, having the public notice only put in some piece of paper somewhere, I believe the City Pulse, which you could barely get these days because of the pandemic. And then on top of that, having the meeting happen without the posting of the public comment that had been received struck me as just sort of, I would say, last straw, except I've been through so many of these straws. So at this point, I feel the need to appeal to the Human Rights Commission because I feel it is the right of the citizens of our city to have access to open government, and we don't have that under the city manager. Last night when I made my comments at City Council, nobody from City Council responded in spite of the fact that 2 members of City Council ran under Campaign for Transparency. 2 members of City Council also have former close alliances with East Lansing and so they know what we try to do for the city. It's very difficult for me to inform the people of the city what's going on, and I work every single day of it. I watch the calendars every single day. I watch the public notices. All I'm asking is for basic things like public notices to be posted at the public notices page at the city site. So I don't have to go figure out where to get a copy of the City Pulse in order to see what's about to happen in my city. All I'm asking for is basic things like the posting of public citizen comments in relation to meetings when they're supposed to be associated with those meetings. I had to literally FOIA this material after the meeting to get it. And the city bothered to copy the city manager and the city attorney on my request to let them know I had requested things that should have been made automatically public without any struggle whatsoever. So I'm not asking you to take action tonight. I will write to you separately so that you all can consider it in a writing form from me. But I'm asking at this point that you take this up as a human rights issue in the city of East Lansing. I believe it is a human rights issue. It is very difficult for people who are marginalized to have anybody advocate for them if the people who have the power to advocate for them don't even know what's going on. And we've been through council after council that I truly believe in transparency, but it's not happening. And I'm tired of it after 6 years. I'm really tired of it. So I appreciate your work, and I will write to you and appeal to you to defend this issue of human rights in the city of East Lansing, especially on a day when reporters are being attacked, and they are the people who try like hell to tell people what's really going on in our government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dreyer, for the call. Are there any other commissioners who want to address that? It looks like Commissioner Catherine, Commissioner Pat, and then Commissioner Davis Dunn. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I missed your name. If you'd like to identify yourself.
Sure. My name is Alice Dreger. It's Dreger, and I am the publisher of East Lansing Info, which is at eastlansinginfo.news. And we are the only real news organization in the city in terms of paying consistent attention to city government.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask is to our chair and maybe to Shelley is, since this was HUD funding and funding for housing, and housing is under our ordinance of issues that protected classes are supposed to find protection under our Human Rights Commission, if this writing that Alice is proposing should actually be a complaint that would be carried out and investigated, or how else could we approach this in a manner where it has a little bit more teeth than just simply asking to make some changes to the city council a website and to the city's website in general.
Shelley, did you want to, I mean, you don't have to, but I don't want to put you in a bind, but did you want to speak to possibly like the scenario that the caller is talking about in regards to, or the issue? Because I could tell you from my perspective, but to me, it is a human rights issue. Information is power. And when you're talking about marginalized people who come from a place of disadvantage,
Like you faded out. Can you repeat? Information is power, and then I can.
Yeah, information is power. And when you talk about a group of people who are coming from a disadvantaged situation, the only and best way for them to be able to bring themselves out of that situation is having information, education, and opportunity. And I'm with the caller in a lot of ways when it comes to expectations and communicating with the community and making sure the community has a pathway to success in that communication and transparency. And not to get on a rant here, but through my subcommittee work and some previous things that we've had in our annual reports with the police department, it's been a very, very ongoing tug of war dynamic for a very long time since I've been participating in local government. And when you talk about public notices and posting citizen comments and just having a meeting that is not properly represented, it's a very disturbing trend, and it's very disturbing to know that this has been going on for a long period of time. And I'm not quite sure in what capacity as our commission is in and able to, but I know that at least a few of us on this would like to advocate for change within that. And this falls, I think, with leadership and with council ultimately, but and maybe even Mrs. Hardy can even speak on some of this as well. But it's a very important issue from my standpoint. And I know that Commissioner Cannon is waiting to speak, as well as Commissioner Davis Dunn. So I just want to get that out off my chest and express that, because I was also on that call, or I was on the meeting last night, and those questions were presented to council, and they went out into the ether. And that sets a bad precedent, not even addressing something that's so important to the community in some ways as far as information. And so it just didn't feel right being a part of that. And so I just wanted to say that. I'll be quiet now because I can keep ranting on. But I'll let Commissioner Cannon speak, and Commissioner Davis Dunn go ahead and go as well. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, have you had difficulty getting information when you have initiated a FOIA request?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Consultations with lawyers, having to pay thousands of dollars for materials over the years, appealing to the city over and over and over again. Absolutely, yes. And I've had to FOIA things that frankly should have just been available.
Yeah, it's not supposed to work that way. You shouldn't have to beg for public information.
And I often, by the way, win my appeals, but it delays giving me the material for months and months and months, which I believe to be absolutely the reason it's done, is to delay the material.
I have seen scenarios in government where that has happened, where they drag their feet intentionally to perhaps persuade you to give up and go away. That's not helpful.
Or at least hope that by the time the material is released, the issue has sort of cooled down, and it's very difficult to get people's attention back to it. Or it's too late to change a decision that City Council or the BRA or whomever has made.
I agree. Well, thank you for sharing that. And
thank you.
Commissioner Davis Dunn.
So I just had a few points of clarification. I know you brought up that the public notice was maybe printed, but it wasn't published on the website. And so I understand that as an issue, but then you also brought up that it was labeled as CBG or something, another name, and I don't know what that acronym stands for, but I didn't know if you do. But basically, you said it was disguised as the conversation around HUD funding for low-income housing. Is that correct?
Sure. So the city has a page for public notices so that when there's hearings coming up, they occasionally post something to it, but they only post the ones that they sort of want us to know about. And then there are often public hearings that I don't find out unless I pick up for the HUD Cdbg, which is Community Block Development Grants. It's money that is given out by HUD to cities that are recognized as having poverty issues. And I can explain to you why we end up in that category, which is basically that students have low income. And so because students have low income and HUD approaches it in a sort of simplistic data way, we appear to have low income in the Bailey neighborhood. And so it looks like the Bailey neighborhood is a neighborhood of poverty because students don't earn very much. The city takes this money that is meant for low income housing and they use it to fix sidewalks in the downtown with money that's supposed to be going to low income housing because they say it's an area recognized by HUD, which it is, as a section of poverty, which is absurd. So it's CDBG is Community Development Block Grant money. The way that they listed this meeting on the city calendar is Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report Public Hearing. I had to Google to try to figure out what the heck this hearing was even about and why it would be sandwiched between Christmas and New Year's. I could not figure out. But I believe the answer to be because they were basically trying to bury it. Because there's a lot of objections to the way the city is using this money that is meant to be used for low-income housing.
All right, just a quick second, Commissioner Dunn. Justin, as the caller begins to speak, can we get her time back on there so we can be fair in regards to that? Because we did enact that for this evening, even though she is answering questions and we can ask all the questions we want, but I just want to make sure we're fair and have somewhat of a time on our participation so we do have the rest of the meeting to hit up as well. So please go ahead, Commissioner Dunn.
I would like to revisit that comment, but my other follow-up, and thank you for explaining the larger concern or suspicion around the lack of public notice and how it was presented for topic of discussion. And I'm curious as to what, again, our authority is with the HRC to even investigate or raise issues around how the money is being spent, and B, the lack of consistency with public notice. But I look forward to your letter to us, and in any recommendations that you may have, and which ways that we can support the work that you do in helping us be better informed, and so that we can better inform the general public, because these are things that we should be paying attention to. Because there are other communities of need, and where those dollars could be better spent. And again, we may not have the full picture or understanding of the circumstance or situation there, but just from what we heard from your perspective, it is alarming. So thank you for bringing that to our awareness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to address or have questions for the caller? Yes, Commissioner Sardar.
I think we got bogged down into the specifics of this particular public notice issue here, but I would like to propose that we consider adding transparency in the city affairs as an agenda item in a meeting, so that we can evaluate how we can first of all implement certain measures to increase the transparency and the good faith in the city's operations, and going forward, so that we have a mechanism to evaluate it and see how we are doing. And that transparency should not just be limited to this one particular item that we discussed about, like public notices, but I've heard the issue about the FOIA being delayed and costing money come up several times in the past. Maybe we should look into making that information more easily and accessible. Perhaps even making recommendations where certain information should not necessarily have to be FOIA. It should be readily accessible on the city's website. I did serve on the city's technology panel previously, and we talked about trying to put out as much data as possible on the city's website, accessible to the citizens. But because of budget constraints, those were not things that could be implemented. That said, that should not prevent the city from trying to do what they can in the spirit of transparency. And in the long run, it's only going to help the cities increase the good faith in the city's operations and in the law enforcement's operations. I'll end with that.
Well said, Commissioner Sardar. And I really like how that was shaped in measures of transparency of city affairs. I love that, and hopefully we can run with that and build on top of that. Are there any other comments before we move on in regards to the caller's input?
No, but I would like to revisit the conversation around fairness of the time limit. I don't know what the MCL says, but I do believe this caller did, get to use all of her time, but creating rules around discussion, because we were able to comment and then have dialogue. And so I understand that the reason for the 5-minute rule is to kind of limit the time we're spending or making sure that everyone has enough time to be heard with their public comment, but needing to figure out what is the fairness rules around commenting, or an exchange of dialogue with the callers. And so I didn't know if that was what you were getting at when you asked about the time the caller still had and publishing that on the screen, because I didn't know if that would inhibit the caller from responding if their time is already expired.
Thank you. Are there any other comments in regards to the caller? All right. Thank you for the call. We appreciate you. We appreciate continue on this, and we look forward to the emails so we can grow in on the subject. So thank you. Very much appreciated. We'll move on to item 2.2, written communication. And so on the first line item that you see there, we had the Brookfield neighborhood letter that we sent out in regards to the covenant issue that was initially written communication from a community member that I spoke with, and we did our research. We had a meeting, we had a discussion in regards to that, and they responded. And they responded, I know you can read for yourself, but in just that, it's something that they appreciate as far as what we can do and what we were thinking about as far as this being an issue. I was relieved personally to see that this is something that they are not just okay with. And it's something that is important to them. They've worked on it. It seems like they've exhausted, the neighborhood associations have not exhausted a lot of what they can do at their level. And it's really going to come down, as we had discussed before, through legislation in the House of Representatives. So I'll open it up if anyone has any response, questions, or comments in regards to the email sent back to us.
I kind of interpreted the letter a little differently. I understand that they were saying that they have some owners that live out of state that kind of prevented them getting the, what was it, 2/3 signature. Liz, we can't hear you.
100% signature.
Oh, they need 100% signature. And so, and was it, and understand that their association feel like they've exhausted everything, but is it not, I think, Liz, I brought this to your attention under our mandate. And I wonder if it's worth the commission going after those the individual holdouts. I don't know if we have truly exhausted everything. I know that they're keep checking back for that movement on the House bill, but if no one champions it and takes it anywhere, it just sits there and dies. And so I'm curious if we've actually exhausted things on our end to create more movement on the holdouts under our mandate and our authority.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's Dunn. Yes, Commissioner Cannon.
Yes, I thought his letter was very responsive to the concerns, and it seemed genuine and sincere to me. That he was asking if we had any suggestions to help them get over the hump, and which caused me to wonder, is that the kind of thing we could ask our city attorney for some guidance on, or would that be not appropriate? Shelley, what do you know about that?
We have asked the city attorney about this.
Okay.
Actually addressed it. Liz, maybe you can remember a year and a half ago, probably. Unfortunately, as a city, he spoke on the behalf of the city. There's nothing the city can do.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was really the main frustration when we first found this about, and that's really what generated our letter to them, just to make sure, if anything stuck that we sent out, because our hands are tied at this level, and it is a legislative issue based on the way that how well written badly this covenant has been done to make it almost impossible at our level to weigh in on it. Yes, Commissioner Catherine, and then Vice Chair Miller.
So I see the other letter that you wrote, Chuck, to Representative Grigsby. Is that correct? Okay. I was wondering if something prevented the city council to also sign on to that, and maybe also use kind of their position and influence to help, and not in an official capacity if that's not possible, or even to pass a resolution approving it or supporting this to cause a little bit more noise that we could draft and pass on to city council. Just kind of brainstorming.
Yeah, I think there was a similar initiative of what you're laying out there, Commissioner Catherine, and I'm not sure Shelley will be able to chime in on this, but we, in all honesty, we have done what we have done in council. You know, they're just like us. We're very limited in what we can do. We could always, like we said, you know, have them sign their signature on that letter as well, but the results legally would have been the same. You know, so I really sympathize with the issue and how important it is. And again, I took this very seriously when we got the written communication. I called that person directly. I talked with some very active people in the community who really gave me a lot of background on the details of what we've tried to do in the past and try to find a path forward and find out a different outcome. And again, you know, we were left with what we did in action from our standpoint as a commission. And I know, you know, that's not what we all want to hear, but that's kind of where we're at, unfortunately. Shelley, please go ahead and chime in if you wanted to add anything to that.
I believe that the resolution that City Council passed in honor of Alex Hosey mentioned the fact that they're on that, but it discussed Alex's essay and the fact that he wrote about redlining in East Lansing and how there are neighborhoods with this history, and there might be a mention of it in there. I can pass that on to you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Cannon.
I did put in a call to State Representative Julie Grigsby and have not heard back from her. Although in fairness to her, I left the message between the big holidays and she may not have received it yet. I can reinitiate that call and see until I get a response.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Chuck. I think legislation addressing it would surely help the neighborhood association open some doors.
Thank you, Commissioner Cannon. I want to get Commissioner Honey and Commissioner Tyler and then Commissioner Catherine, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up to what Crystal said. I know it wouldn't be anything legal or binding, but I am a little bit intrigued by your idea, and I'm wondering if we know, are there a certain, limited number of people that are refusing to sign this, and would it be worth discussing the idea of writing a letter on behalf of the HRC asking them for symbolic reasons? And obviously we can't force them to do it, but I don't think that's a terrible idea, Crystal. I just wanted to follow up and say I have support for kind of putting some more thought into what that might look like and whether that would be something that would be appropriate for us. Just to ask them to please do right as a citizen of East Lansing or something like that. So I just wanted to give support to Crystal's querying about whether that might be something we might be able to consider. I would support considering an action like that. Not that understanding it won't be legally binding, but it might at least be a symbolic and a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Honey. Commissioner Tyler, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I do first want to say that I appreciate their efforts, but to me, I still feel like it's not good enough. I'm going to say that, potentially as a new person that could be moving to a community. So maybe I would say that we look at maybe a way to have a document on our website that highlights maybe best and inclusive neighborhoods in East Lansing community, and all neighborhoods that fall according to our criteria can be listed underneath that. And maybe that can urge people in their associations to kind of reach out to those folks even more. Maybe not necessarily punishing folks, but highlighting folks who are doing things well.
That's a terrific idea.
Thank you. Commissioner Catherine, and then Vice Chair Miller, please go ahead.
Liz can go because I feel like she had her hand up before.
Thanks. Yeah, I really like a lot of these ideas, and I was really struck by Catherine when you said, could City Council also write to Grigsby? I wonder if one of a strategy is a more community organizing, and instead of like the representative from Brookfield calling every month, the representative from HRC, if there might be some interest in doing a more coordinated, wider phone call, letter writing campaign so that our representatives know that this isn't just 10 people's issue, but this is an issue that a lot more people care about. And if there are folks who would be willing to talk about what that could look like in a broader sense to move that. Part of what moves legislation forward is people saying that their representatives care about that issue. So, yeah.
Thank you, Vice Chair Miller. Yes, Commissioner Davis Dunn.
go, Catherine was actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, real quick. So since you're sending that letter, Chuck, either way, we might as well do it in a way that carries weight. So if there could be, even if, I mean, we can do this draft to just the boilerplate kind of letter that each individual council member can sign on to, and then put in a packet of all the attempts or letters that have been made in the past, right? Because this is the cumulative effort that has been happening for so long, in like a box, so it looks as, you know, try to make it as visual and as scary as the existence of this language still is, right? So I would try to make it as visual as well, instead of just a piece of paper, and maybe ask, you know, the council members to, on the same day, you know, MLK Day is coming up, so that would be a great way to kind of push forward and be part of this conversation. Every city council member could post it on their social media. We could post it on our social media and really do a day out of it. You know, I just an idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Yes, Commissioner Davis Dunn.
Yeah, Catherine, I think those are great ideas around just like increasing advocacy and awareness of these issues, so that our representatives will, you know that this is the will and demand of the community that something be done. But Liz, I don't know if you can answer these questions. It said the person's response, Ben's response said that they had 30 signatures and then the pandemic hit. I'm curious about what is the number of holdouts, and then and so I don't know if you know that. And then my other question was, do you know if the, individual property titles have this discriminatory language? And the reason why I asked that, because then it's not just the Brookfield neighborhood covenant that we're writing and asking to change. It's the individual landowners. And then under our mandate, you know, through our investigation, if we find that individuals are intentionally, you know, engaging or prohibiting or, you know, violating civil rights, and quite frankly, to have the language still in those titles is, I mean, it's illegal. And we can go after those individual landowners, like under our mandate, from what I understand and from what, you know, the authority we have in our, within our commission. And so I think, you know, it depends on, again, the will of this commission, how far you want to go, and, you know, can take the route of engaging the community with, you know, public advocacy around this, and getting more of our leaders to, you know, contact Representative Grigsby, calm down. Or we can take a more aggressive approach within our commission to say, like, hey, this is not welcome here, and it needs to be done. And I mean, it says up to a $500 fine, and that's if they're in continued violation of it. So I mean, that $500 add up, and I know usually when you hit people in the pockets, you know, they're more willing and they're likely to change. So I don't know if that's something that we could consider, but I think it's another strategy.
To answer your questions, if that's okay, I believe there's about, I think around 100 properties. And the pandemic really, there was a lot of momentum. This was the focus of, this was our neighborhood's focus, and then the pandemic hit. They have to be notarized. So it's, you're meeting with a person. There were notary parties happening in the neighborhood. And those had just begun to be organized. We were like 2 months into those when everything shut down. And I think I'm not on the neighborhood council, but, you know, their communications is like can they, in good faith right now, encourage people to gather in groups to do this work in the middle of the pandemic. And so, yeah, that absolutely slowed it, and it needs to figure out. I feel like we've adapted to being, getting things done during the pandemic. So we should absolutely encourage them to repick that up. Part of it, like, just to speak to something that came up earlier, it's not a local residence. Part of it's finding the landowner, the homeowner from out of state. They're not local citizens. So it's not individual properties, it's the neighborhood covenant. If you open it up to individual properties, there's a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but there, in other neighborhoods in East Lansing, there are individual, the historic deeds that people are given when they buy their house include that language. It's not legal language, it's not legally enforceable, but from what I understand from the research I've done in this area is that when there's historic language and it's not legally enforceable, it's often just left in there because you don't change those sort of documents. They just get passed down from one to the other. So I do think that would be a really powerful community. Critical, you talked about reconciliation earlier, and what is, I think that's an important reckoning in East Lansing, that there is language in individual homes in various neighborhoods in East Lansing. There are people who don't even know that it's buried in there. So what that to light, and what is the reconciliation work that needs to do? The city council led with the formal apology, but is there, there's all different systemic levels, so they represented the city government, but is there, in terms of residents and citizens, reconciliation work to do with that in terms of our inheritance of racism and white supremacy in East Lansing, and to reconcile with that history with our values today?
Thank you, Vice Chair Miller. Commissioner Honig, did you want to speak on it?
Just real quick, I know we probably need to move on soon, but my house in the flower pot is one of those houses that has that language in it. And a couple years ago when Sam Hosey, when we did our event at the Hannah Center, I actually copies were made and handed out to everybody, and I donated those old papers to Sam Hosey what's Sam's
Alex
name? Well, to Alex Hosey and his family to be included in the curriculum that they're creating at East Lansing High School to talk about the history of redlining. So that's one use. I mean, that's what I did my old deed, because it says specifically in my deed, that house can only be sold to a Caucasian family. Of course, it's historic. You said, Liz, not legally binding, but that is now being hopefully used as part of the curriculum at East Lansing High School. And so that's just another avenue we can think about in terms of educating people about this history.
Thank you, Commissioner Honig. If you want to talk about action steps or the next move in regards to what we've done so far, I'm open to hearing that. If not, maybe we can kind of let it marinate and see what we can come up with. But I'm interested if anyone has anything they want to offer in regards to the next action step pertaining to the issue. Yes, Commissioner Davis Dunn, and then Commissioner Catherine.
I wonder if we can pull any data. I mean, right now, from what we understand, African Americans make up 8% of this community. And I wonder if we can pull not only for Brookfield, but just in various neighborhood association, any demographic data around of residents, just to see if there's any pattern of discrimination or kind of hidden redlining patterns around housing in this community. From my personal experience when shopping and purchasing a home here in East Lansing, I was working with a realtor that, wanted to convince me to buy in South Lansing, that, I would, feel safer there, and that, you know, it's more affordable, and that I don't want to be house poor in East Lansing, assuming that they understood what my income was. And so it happens, and it happens in a very subliminal, you know, what we call microaggression way. And so I wonder if we can commission or pull any data or statistics on homeownership demographics or residency demographics in this community, and look at the trends of purchasing and selling, you know, to have a clearer picture on really what the issues are, whether it is, you know, old language, or if it's really a practice of certain communities to, you know, not be very welcoming of people of color. And so to the point that Commissioner Tyler made about, yeah, I think that if this is something that we really can't take any real aggressive action on and holding people accountable to do what's right, that we can highlight, you know, areas or communities where people of color can feel safe and welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Catherine.
Okay, so the way that I see this is there are two quote unquote schools of thought. So one was, you know, the more kind of advocacy legislative route, and the other one was the more grassroots route to going after those landlords that were, you know, either far away and had the difficulty of the notarizing their signatures. So I was wondering if we could have a couple of people to organize like each. So Chuck, since you already wrote the, Chair Grigsby, since you already wrote the, Chair Grigsby, since you already wrote the letter and you had the intention of sending it out, I was wondering if you could probably pioneer a little bit of the advocacy piece, and then talk to city councilors, and then Shelley, whatever you had that was mentioned from the city, and putting that together in a packet, and to put it all together and try to figure out a way to send it in that would be loud and clear. And then maybe Liz with Crystal and Karen, if they wanted to lead a little bit more of the grassroots route, where you go after, okay, so what are the numbers that you have and what's missing, to look at it, you know, both ways and not to, you know, just kind of cut any corners. And given the legwork that you have done, Commissioner Miller, on all the on this work, and being in your neighborhood, you could pioneer that, knowing the residents of your area that are, you know, specifically working on this. So that would be my suggestion. I don't know if there needs to be a motion for this, but I would feel that waiting until the next month to think about doing something, instead of we can think about doing something right now and then start doing it, would be a much better approach, because I believe that there's a lot that has already been done. It's just a matter of us taking a little bit of time outside the meetings to really compile that work to make it effective.
Are there any responses, commissioners, to her thoughts? Because the letter that you're referring to it's already been sent out. It's like that was just in there for communication for you as a point of reference, and we had decided on that as a group in our last meeting, and that was kind of really what the limited process was. And we're just now talking about, since that was what we did, I think a lot of people don't feel that that's enough, and so I just wanted to clarify that for you. But did any other commissioners want to respond to possibly some of those suggestions? Yes, Commissioner Cannon.
Yeah, I will volunteer to call Representative Grigsby again and talk to her about it. It may be that she's, or someone on her staff has already looked into it, but I would at least like to call the issue and the letter to her attention again, and see if she can be persuaded to introduce legislation that would require that in state law as well as our ordinance, and see where that gets us. That, believe it or not, I think if it's a state law that they're violating, it may carry a little more weight. I'm just saying. So.
I don't know, to the other half of that, of just getting data and a clear picture of just kind of housing practices in East Lansing. Do we have a system? I don't know, Shelley, if you can answer that, or a way to pull any demographics, statistics, or data on rentals or
home ownership.
Yeah.
I will ask. Definitely. And also regarding Pat's comments, Liz, you might want to give an update about where this is legislatively. I believe you've shared that with us before, and that kind of prompted the letter, but this is kind of
sitting
all in a committee or something, I believe.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's sort of sitting in committee waiting for enough people to care about it to push it forward.
Right. And Elaine reminded me that Sarah Anthony is the rep that introduced it in the State House. So if anyone has a connection with
Now that the last few months are behind us, I think that Julie might be in a better position to re-tackle that, and I'll suggest that and see what happens.
I mean, I do have a relationship with Representative Anthony. From what I understood, that she introduced it and then it was then moved to another commission. And so, but I can address the issue with her. But I think in a sense of kind of one of the priorities around, the commission was to kind of carry out community education. And I think just having some data, some statistics on what the housing practices are here, and what, the history and what redlining looks like presently would be helpful in the interim, as well as highlighting kind of safe havens or ideal residency. I think those are actionable things that we can do now, because the other stuff is kind of out of our control. I mean, we can call and write letters, but I think as a commission, things that we can do now is to, kind of gather that data, evaluate it, and then, publish something to the largest community so that they can be informed.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis-Dunn. Is there any other comments before we move on in regards to that? It sounds like we do have those comments before we move on. We do have quite a bit left on our agenda, so I would like to move forward, but not forget what we are talking about and not diminish how important it is to some of us on the commission here. So,
just to clarify with Crystal, is it your understanding, Crystal, that Sarah Anthony has introduced legislation to address this issue, but it's languishing in the committee?
Yeah, I think she introduced it to the House, and then it was basically delegated to a committee. I don't know what committee. Is that correct? Okay. And and so I just asked that this issue be under old business on our next agenda to make sure that we're following up and that we have some response regarding data that we can pull and information that we can provide to the public around what modern day redlining may look like.
Good idea, Crystal.
Thank you, commissioners, for the great discussion. And I think we feel a little bit better than what we did when we first started this in regards to that. So we'll move on to the next line item. We have the use of force review draft that was submitted in our written communication. Did everyone get a chance to look at that and understand kind of really what some of that is before we start the discussion with that? I think one of the commissioners, Commissioner Honey or Commissioner Davis-Dunn, was going to talk about this to the group, if I understand that correctly, and just kind of update the HRC about what we have going on and where we're at with that overall, if I'm not mistaken.
So if I would kind of just speak about what this document was, and then Karen, I didn't have a chance to put it in work one, but Commissioner Karen or Honey, if you wanted to kind of discuss what we talked about in our subcommittee, I did forward your document out to the commission. If unfortunately I didn't get it on time, so it didn't make it a part of our agenda. But essentially, this document was kind of our entryway for obtaining the requested videos. It wasn't the entire list of videos, but we did get a commitment to review 4 videos that we had previously requested. I think we reviewed a total of 6, if that's correct, between the meetings. And so these are some of the objectives that we kind of identified for our reasoning for investigating and looking into use of force. And so, again, revisiting kind of our strategy, and I think this is the main focus point of our next steps is, looking at those contributing factors that contribute to use of force during police encounters. And, our goal is to, as a committee, research some best practices and make some recommendations to City Council and the study committee for, the adoption of certain policy trainings and standards. And so, again, so listed some of the activities that we were going to do there, and we've done that. We're still waiting on a copy of the unredacted use of, sorry, my dogs, my puppies are unredacted version of a few of the use of force, and then training and other redacted documents they have on the website that we were not able to review that kind of contribute to some of the practices and procedures around officers' conduct. And so, essentially that's what the attached document is our attention, our strategy for tackling the issue of use of force. Karen, do you have your document up?
I don't. Is that the one that you did email it to everybody, right?
I did, and so I can. I'm struggling with my. Here we go. Let me try to pull it up again.
So, did you want me to talk a little bit more about kind of like moving forward, or?
I think the way your document was highlighted, kind of what our major observations or concerns were, and then kind of moving forward to some suggestions and kind of our next steps. So if you wanted to kind of get some clarification and talk about what we observed, a part of our agreement with reviewing the videos is that we would not disclose any identifiable information. The individuals in the videos, because some of the cases were pending. But there there are some scenarios that we can discuss if you guys are wanting more insight on what we observed. But just a little bit of the videos that we saw was quite alarming.
Sure, I'd love to speak about that. Does everybody have a copy of that document? Is it helpful for me to read it out loud, or if everybody could pull it up and look at it? I don't know if it would be helpful to someone to screen share and put it up. Basically, we summarized.
I can screen share it if people don't have it.
Yeah, if you want to screen share it, that might be helpful so anyone that's watching can also see. I want to talk first about kind of how we decided we're going to get work as a subcommittee. We've had a lot of conversation about it. I think originally when we set out on this project, we had a vision of what this is going to look like that looked at looking very regularly, like once a month, at a number of meetings, discussing them, giving feedback and recommendations. It has not played out the way that we had originally anticipated. I think we do appreciate videos we've been able to look at. It's a time-consuming process, and it involves the time, a time commitment as well from the police chief and deputy chief and a lot of other people. So I understand why it's not necessarily something that's realistic to try to do once a month. So Crystal and Chuck and I kind of talked about, feel pretty like we have some good reflections and strategy ideas and suggestions and recommendations to move forward, and we are not necessarily going to be requesting monthly videos. But we did agree that what we'd like to do is maybe take a little hiatus from looking at videos for 3 to 4 months maybe, and then request another couple set of videos after we have a chance to maybe make some recommendations and see if anything has changed, see if there's been any improvement, see if any new policies or procedures, or the new social workers are making a difference. So that's kind of where we're at, and chime in, Crystal or Chuck, if I'm not representing our kind of decision adequately.
No, Karen, I appreciate that. And yeah, second, with a lot of what was said. And so I really want to give the HRC, because our work as a subcommittee was designed to look at the use of force that was mandated by council as one of the things, and approved by Mayor Stevens, as we all know. And we got to the point of being able to see, I believe it was 9 or 10 videos in total of, I think, the 15 that was requested ultimately in agreement. And we were able to eventually also look at case reporting and some different things. So we were able, in a short period of time, once we did have that transparency in play, to really gather a lot of data information based on the use of force within our city. And we learned a lot. We could always learn more by watching more information, getting more data, and things of that nature. But from my understanding, I wanted to get to a certain point of where we were at with our recommendation back to the HRC, and have an overall discussion about our next plan of attack. And in our subcommittee, we had some ideas, which this document that you're looking at reflects some of that. But there's also some things in there that I think go beyond what the subcommittee mandate was designed for. And it is very, very important, as we do our work and we do have these subcommittees, that we stay on task on the core issue that we were tasked to do. So I just want to use this document as an example of kind of some of the different things that we got, and how difficult it is to be a subgroup and be a part of this process, and then come back to you and give you the commission an overall feeling of what should be happening and what we should do overall. So that's very, very challenging in what itself is. So for me, I am at the point where, based on what we've done so far, my recommendation would be to talk about a few different things and what those should be and how we should go forward as a commission. So I just wanted to add that little 2 cents in there because when you think about the use of force and some of the different things that we were exposed to, a lot of those things bled into some other different things. We were looking at the force continuum, use of force continuum, and some of those different issues with policy. And we were talking in our subgroup that, a lot of what we were doing was looking at behavior and trying to understand that. And then we also wanted to look at policy and how that was implemented. So we had a marriage of these two different things. And it's just really, I think personally, very difficult to be able to kind of give you appreciation of some of the different things that we would expect you guys to understand based on our experience.
And I just wanted to chime in and thank you, Chair, for bringing up the point of how our initial charge was to investigate one thing, and it led to this kind of unearthing or exposure of other systemic issues that play into that root problem. And so I think there's a number of things that we can work on, and I don't know if we can divide some of this task around what Commissioner Honey was discussing around requesting more videos. And so that was a bit of, that was a larger challenge of us even getting to this point, was having access to that. And as the Police Oversight Committee or Commission is being formulated, those issues need to be addressed. Even when we had the meeting, we were supposed to have unredacted copies of these documents, but we got redacted copies of the documents, and these documents are forwardable. And so I think to Commissioner Sardar's concern around good faith and transparency, like, you know, as a commission, we can, you know, make recommendations or sponsor a resolution to address some of the recommendation or sponsor a resolution for commissions and boards to be able to have access to pertinent information that pertains to their mandate and their charge. And I think those are some actionable steps that we should take as we continue to move forward in this work. But back to what we found in our subcommittee of the use of force, from the videos and the kind of what the council had charged us to do with the comparison of the 8 can't wait and comparing the use of force continuum, as well as making recommendations for the utilization of the social workers within the police department. It exposed a lot of, again, systematic issues within the policy, the continuum, the force continuum policy or protocol, and East Lansing. I don't know if you guys saw the attached memo around, you know, what East Lansing has adopted for, you know, to comply with the 8 can't wait. But I think there's more research and follow-up needed. And I don't know, I know Chair Grigsby spoke a little bit about his background and working within the judicial system or criminal justice system. And I don't know if any other commissioners have experience working in social services, working in human services that can support Commissioner Honey and I recommendations for the utilization of the social workers. I've done some research on kind of best practices and trainings and things that other departments have adopted across the country, utilizing social workers. So to kind of adhere to one of our first charges from the council, I think that we can kind of work together and kind of form another work group to make those recommendations to the East Lansing, the chief, on how he could better utilize the social workers. But I think that we are going to need more support and expansion around the work of the use of force and the policy changes and recommendations that need to come forth. And so I think I would like to turn it back over to Karen, Commissioner Honey, to kind of talk about what the major observations were and concerns were.
Can you hold,
talk about what our next steps are?
Can you hold for a quick second, Commissioner? Can you hold for a quick second, Commissioner Honey? Because I think we have an issue here. So the screen share that we have right now is not the document that's on the agenda.
No, this was the document
So this document, number one, the community hasn't had a chance to see this document because this document wasn't submitted properly in a way. So we shouldn't be looking at this at all or referencing this at this point right now. What we should have up is what is on the agenda in the document that was submitted, because that kind of goes into, this document, don't get me wrong, is valuable and very important. And it was sent out to all the commissioners. It was sent out incorrectly as well. So there's a lot of issues with that particular document right now. But Shelley, please go ahead.
Yeah, so this document is on the published agenda. Crystal shared it, I think, Monday night, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the subcommittee report. So everyone does have access to it, and it was republished 24 hours prior to the meeting.
So the document that you're talking about, it starts off with HRC Equity Review Committee.
The document that Karen is discussing and sharing is the attachment on the agenda under subcommittee use of force report.
Okay.
So that was the document I was sharing, and
Okay.
Chair, you
This is the first one under written correspondence.
Yes. This
Okay.
is the first
Okay.
the written correspondence that was there, and you asked for me to share the
Perfect.
report
Okay.
that we made as a subcommittee, and that
Okay.
was the document I had up.
Okay, so this document right here that we're looking at currently right now
Is
is
the shared under written communications on the agenda.
Oh.
The previous document I had up was the document that we drafted.
Correct.
The Karen transcribed in our subcommittee meeting, discussing as we debriefed what our collective observations were.
so is that document also on the agenda? Did I just miss it? Is that document also on the agenda as well? The one
It
that's up?
is on the republished agenda as an attachment under subcommittee reports.
Okay, so we
documents are on the agenda. Is
Okay.
that correct?
Yes. So we were talking about a different document in the wrong space right there that was presented. So that's where I got confused because I didn't see that come up first. So I just got confused. So I apologize because it looked like the document that you had up was not the document that we had on the next line item of a written communication. So I just wanted to really make sure that we were clear in which document we had and we had the correct one, and then which document we're talking about that's listed on the agenda and where we're at, because we didn't make a decision or a point of reference that we were talking about a different document, unlike the one that was on the next item.
Okay. So the document that's up right now is the published document. The original document was really basically notes that I took and sent to Crystal and Chuck during our last subcommittee meeting. And Crystal really synthesized it and formalized it a little bit more, and that's what we're looking at right here.
And that is the document that I saw in my email.
Okay, good. Thank you, Pat. So good. This is just a little bit more formalized, concise version of the original document. Was really just notes I had jotted down. So I really appreciate Commissioner Davis Dunn taking the time to do this. You know, you really put a lot of work into the documents that you create, Crystal, and I really do appreciate it. There's a lot, so I'm just going to summarize. I want to reiterate that one of the other things that we talked about is our ultimate goal. We know that ultimately the police oversight committee that is formed is going to take this over. And so we're trying to really create clear pathways to make sure that once the commission, the study committee, I don't know if the study committee will be taking this on or we're waiting on the actual police oversight committee, but we are hoping to get to a point, like as Chuck mentioned, where we're not going to have to, where things are going to be more streamlined, where when documents are requested, there's a process in place for them, for those documents to be shared in a timely manner and all of that. So that's one of our goals moving forward. This is at the very beginning after looking at, I think maybe like Chuck said, 8 or 9 videos. And this is a really good place to start. We actually, I feel like, have a lot of information and recommendations to share, but it's just the beginning, and I'm sure that we'll have more in the future. But I guess I'll summarize, if that's okay, and then Crystal and Chuck, you guys can chime in. Like Crystal said, we were really focusing and looking at the videos on individual behaviors of police officers, because that's really what you do when you watch a video, and then talking about how that relates to policies and procedures. And so I can say that for me in the work that I do in early childhood special education, I'm constantly being trained in new evaluation tools and new curriculums, and I have been videotaped many, many, many times. It's hard to watch yourself on a video and put yourself up for to be critiqued, but to me, it's the most powerful way that you learn and you move forward. And so, one of our big takeaways that we all discussed was how much we learned by watching these videos. What we think is most important is that the police officers that are involved in these scenarios, and then the supervisors, and then the newly hired social workers are the most important people to be viewing these videos, because there is so much to learn by watching, just by watching what happened. And so one of our main suggestions and priorities is that, because this is partly about us making recommendations about the use of the social worker. Obviously, that's not our job, but we have been asked to make recommendations. So we all felt very strongly that a very important use of the social worker would be to talk about de-escalation skills and human relationships and crisis intervention and that watching videos with the social worker, the police chief or a supervisor, as well as the officers involved in the incidents and maybe other officers that are in training could be a really, really powerful tool. So we feel very, very strongly that that is a very important use of the social worker. We felt, I'm going to just look at this here, some of the major things that we noticed in all of the different events was lack of consistent approach when there's an incident coming and the way we see about that. We probably didn't see a wide array enough of videos to make a determination about what that's about, how much that's about race, gender, all that. But obviously, we know that that is going to come into play. We noticed that in almost every video that we watched, that we all were Chuck and Crystal and I were struck by how many officers show up in the first place, and even the way their body language is, and even the way they're positioned with their authority and power over the suspect.
Can I have a quick question for you? I mean, if I could say something real quick.
Yeah, please.
This is word, but I'm just kind of curious, and I want Chuck's opinion on this. Chuck, isn't this a duplication of the efforts of this oversight study committee?
Yeah, great question, and this is what I think is what I hear, because we were in item 2.2 and we jumped down to 4.1 and presenting that, but this is what I thought we have as really a great source for us to send over to the study committee to enhance what we got going on over there as well. And so this is kind of what I was trying to refer to as where we're at right now in the process. And then all the other stuff that's outside that, like social workers, the A Can't Wait, some of those things go outside what I thought the parameter was and what we were initially going for, because as you see these recommendations and some of the different things we came to as a subcommittee really is the end result of where we're at now with our work. So yes, long story short with your question, it is. And, I think we need to have an understanding about kind of really how we use this information that's being presented. If it's something that the subcommittee is prepared to kind of share forward, talk about more with the overall group, which we're doing right now, and go from there. So that's kind of my answer to your question.
I'm sorry, Karen, to interrupt. I'm confused as well. When you talk about overlap of what the study committee is doing, as to what specifically are you guys investigating use of force incidents, and so have you guys begun to review videos from the East Lansing encounters?
Are you asking? Go ahead.
Yeah, who are you asking the question to?
I mean, Chuck or Tyler or whatever. Sorry, Commissioner Tyler. I was just kind of curious as to.
Yeah, so we had presentations by each of the respective groups in all of these areas, and also we broke it up into subgroups and did research and reports on this. So we had conversations based on a lot of the content that you provided here.
So,
in particular, I wrote section 1 of this. Not of this, but just kind of the introduction and where we're at right now in terms of reviewing the minutes and putting together an executive summary of where we plan to go.
Okay, and so, and I'm just a little confused because in our actions, our strategies, as a subcommittee, as chair and vice chair, was pushing for this opportunity, and from what I understood was so that we could do the legwork as the study committee is taking shape as to investigate what an oversight model would look like. And so it makes me pause to question if we should pivot our actions around just making recommendations to the social workers, and how they could be utilized. And I don't know if that's something that the study committee is looking into as well. Or if our findings, if you guys have not actually reviewed reports and watched videos, that you guys could, the study committee could then do more research into some of the major observations that we've made and concerns around the use of force continuum, and observe officer behaviors and conduct, and existing policies and standards. Because then that would then shift our focus more to examining and maybe supporting de-escalation types of models, which are crisis intervention models that is often used in human services and social work, which is a missing component of the use of force continuum. And from what I discovered from my research and review of policies, that East Lansing Police Department do not have clear defined definitions or standards for de-escalation. They don't even have a defined time or window of what a appropriate compliance time or response would be. Even in their policy for the duty to intervene, it still is not clearly defined what is excessive force, because it's based off the subjectivity of the officer. And we also noticed from the videos that depending on the officer and their experience, how they conducted themselves when engaging with civilians. We also witnessed officers, they talk about training that happens once a year for de-escalation, and it's only one staff that's responsible for de-escalation, but they don't have an actual policy on de-escalation. We also witnessed a rookie officer that was on probation for 6 months, but that responded to a civilian that was inebriated, escalate a situation, and then
So what I can say is, not to cut you off, just not to get into the weeds of it. To me, you all did a lot of great work. So maybe, Chuck, there's an opportunity to have an item on the agenda for the Police Oversight Committee for you all to kind of discuss your findings and specifics with the group.
Can I respond to Dr. Tyler? That's exactly what I was just going to say. Really, everybody has this. People can read this and give us input on this. The last thing I want to be doing is, recreating the wheel. And ultimately, we know that this work needs to go over to the study committee. I'm actually very encouraged to know that you all are already doing this work. It makes a lot of sense to me that we would then maybe share this with, maybe we'd be invited to one of your meetings. We could share our findings. And then in the future, be there for consultation, and maybe kind of like what I think I hear both Chuck and Chris alluding to is shift our focus a little bit, because there's so much work to be done. We all shouldn't be doing the same thing. So I really appreciate, Dr. Taylor, you pointing that out, and that's really good to know. I did not know that, and maybe I should have been paying more attention. I think the work we've done is really important, and is an important information that I think will be very valuable to your group. But if you're already moving on this, that's great. That's great news to me, because there's so much that we can be doing with our time too. So if you're suggesting, and with Chairman Grigsby and MD and Crystal, if we want to agree to maybe kind of move forward on the agenda and let people look over this on their own, reach out to us with questions, but maybe the next step would be presenting this to the Police Oversight Committee. That might be the best use of our time, rather than going over every last item on here. I feel so passionate and strongly about this. We could probably talk about every last thing we saw for hours and hours, but this probably isn't necessarily the best venue for that at this time. So
thank you, Commissioner Honey. You took the words right out of my mouth, and we are. And I try to, communicate this, and sometimes I don't get it right with my communication, but I did mention this in our subgroup in regards to what we're working on what we're doing. Some of the different things that came out of this was, for example, the appreciation of social works and lack thereof within our understanding of viewing this information. But the study group already has a focus on that in our next meeting that I've recommended that the commissioners watch and be a part of. So then when they do come back and revisit, like maybe the social works, we're not reinventing the wheel. So, so just to kind of wrap this up, some of the things like the de-escalation and some of the different things that we witnessed within our information that we've gathered so far, I think is great information that the study committee in whatever format, whether that's in the written communication, whether that's coming in and talking with us, whatever the case may be, is where that is at. And if in fact that the HRC wants to create another group of people to focus on social work, because that's a totally different mandate than use of force, or really focus on, which is debatable, the 8 can't wait policy, which we have on our agenda in regards to what that means pertaining to use of force and following up with these things. I think that's where we're at with that, at least at this point in HRC. So I just wanted to kind of give you my perspective, my spin, and my response, Dr. Tyler, in regards to what you're hearing and what we need to be looking forward going next. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, what I was going to say, Chuck, is maybe we could just ask if anybody on the commission right now has any burning questions or something they want clarification on, instead of going over every item on here. If people are looking at this, if anyone has any questions about clarification or wants a little bit more information about something, please ask us now. And if not, I think we probably are okay moving on and planning to present this to the police oversight study group in the near future.
All right, I think the silence answers, unless someone's on mute and they're trying to speak. But yeah, we'll go ahead and move on. We'll move on and get going. And again, you're more than welcome to reach out and provide any information to complement what you got here. But we will move on because we are really over our time right now. We still got a little bit of work to do, and I think we've covered.
So are we?
Excuse me.
I have a quick question. So are we pivoting or our focus from this use of force subcommittee to a de-escalation, or then the social worker utilization as it applies to like use of force? And because I mean, we talk about them use of force and de-escalation kind of like separately when they are kind of like partners, congruent, like they you know, one has to happen before the other. And in our current policy, there is, you know, they say de-escalation and it's literally in quotation marks, but there is no, it's not a part of the use of force continuum practice. And so the social workers are there to be a part of that intervention to reduce encounters of use of force. So I'm trying to figure out then, is it a motion? Is it, you know, how, what is the decision about the work that we're doing if we are moving away from the use of force continuum?
So if I understand you correctly, and again, I would like to move along here. If I understand your question correctly, what we are doing with what we have here, we're not moving away from use of force. We're not, you know, we still have to finish up giving our report to, if I understand correctly, to the study committee, or presenting that to the study committee and talking about our experience and the information we have going forward. But the subcommittee that we were tasked to be, we had specific parameters to look at use of force. And even though, for example, de-escalation is associated with the process of use of force, it's not what the subcommittee was designed to look at as the single issue for our mandate. Now, if we want to create another one and talk about other things, then we can create that. But for the use of force, we're not going away from that. We still have some things to finish up with that as far as presenting it and giving the information we have going forward. But we do have some other issues that came up, as I was saying earlier, that go into play with use of force that I think goes outside the scope of what the subcommittee was designed for, to hopefully answer your question.
And Chuck, that's what I wanted to add. I think it warrants a conversation with the oversight committees. First, because of all the hard work that you all did. Second, so we can fill in the gaps and and see some synergies that we may both have, in our respective groups.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good work, and I hope I'm not coming off in a way where I'm trying to, take away from that or disparage, the energy that's been put into it. I'm not doing that at all, but I do know we have parameters that we need to abide by, and we also have another group who is doing and has a little bit more resources than we do in regards to that. So, for example, next week we're going to have community health coming in, and they're going to be talking about social work's implementation of that, some of the issues that go into that, and how social workers and policing can coexist in a way that's productive and have a positive outcome on the community and the police force. And I know that the Commissioner Honey and Commissioner Davis Dunn have a background in social work, and they really want to look at this issue and really contribute, which is nothing wrong with that. But again, that is separate from the actual use of force in my mind, unless someone can tell me differently, but it goes outside of what we were working on initially in regards to that advocacy.
Yeah, I guess for the second time, I'm interested in moving forward, but I think it's important to kind of revisit the written communication that was published on our agenda around what our objectives were as a subcommittee and what the agreement was with the city manager, police chief, and council, which included recommendations for implementing social workers within the police department. Also, the use of force continuum and the 8 can't wait policy that was adopted. And so I just want to, more conversation is needed, more clarity is needed as to what our next steps are and how we are investing our energy. But I guess we can.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. All right. So you guys threw for a loop because you guys went straight down to item 5 or 4.1 or wherever it was, and so we're talking about that. So, but we were in a place in the agenda in regards to the use of force review draft that was submitted and on there, and and that's what I was really originally speaking to in regards to kind of how it brought up other things like de-escalation and some of the different things that we've already discussed. So, and I don't want to have certain commissioners dominate all the time, but I want to make sure I get engaged with other commissioners about how they feel about this document, their reaction to it, or what they think about what they see here. But we will move along and have this conversation be very, very tight, if you don't mind. So I will open it up for any commissioners that want to respond to anything in regards to on written communication, HRC use of force review draft. It says KDD behind it. Okay. So did you want to say something briefly, Commissioner Crystal? I think I know you'd like to speak on it, but can you make it brief, please?
What document are you talking about?
Under item 2.2.
We just reviewed that use of force document. I spoke briefly about what our objectives were, and that our strategy was to examine the scope of or factors contributing to the use of force during police encounters, and that is when we turned it over to Commissioner Honey to discuss what our observations were from our activities, which was reviewing the use of force continuum, then reviewing the redacted policies, and then being able to review the reports and video footage in order for us to understand again those factors contributing to use of force during police encounters, which led into the other conversation and what again the outcomes or the deliverables that were asked of us as a subcommittee from the city manager, the chief of police, and council was to make recommendations regarding the use of force practices in the 8 can't wait policy as well as de-escalation tactics and protocols, trainings, and scope and provisions of the East Lansing social workers and resource specialists. And then the other things that were highlighted on there was the trends to recommend for review and monitoring through the police oversight committee and figuring out a way, or publishing information or education to the public around public safety and best practices when engaging with officers. So that is what that document was, and that we had constructed and agreed to in our subcommittee, and that was the document we presented to again the city when they agreed to permit us to watch the videos that we watched last month.
All right, I think we can agree we're talking about the same thing. Is there any other comments? All right, we'll move on. Thank you. So the next item on underlining 2.2, we had the bylaw Rex KDD. Everyone get a chance to look at that document. It's kind of addressing some of the different things that I think Commissioner is hoping to look at as a commission in regards to how we are structured and some of our roles within that structure. And we got correspondence back. I don't have it pulled up, but we did get correspondence back from our city attorney. Sheila, do you have that that addresses that document available to you by chance?
I'm familiar, since I sent the email, I'm familiar just with the conversation I had with her. So so the city attorney just had some concerns about some of the recommendations that were just drafted, but Crystal and I will be having a further conversation about that in the very near future.
And so, and I hate to present this as, again, these are documents that I transcribed, but this was work that was done within our subcommittee. And so, I don't know if Catherine would like to speak to this, but again, some of the observations as new commissioners when we got our binder was that it wasn't really clear about the structuring and decision-making process and role division, who's responsible for what, in our governance and rules of operations. And so, for me, I require a lot of structure, and it's to me, I think it makes it easier to kind of pass the baton along to have a good structure or system in place. It's not to take away from the fluidity or flexibility of the work that we do on the commission, but just for newcomers that we kind of have some expectations of kind of what and how our committee operates and function, and the commitment of the roles and duties that we take when we sign on as commissioners. But Catherine, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, so it was just a conversation about what our with the election coming up when we elected new chair and vice chair, what does that actually mean, and what should we expect from the leadership of the committee in guiding us through the variety of initiatives. So again, like I think Commissioner Davidson hit the nail on the head. It's not to prevent or stall any fluidity and creativity of the committee, because I think this is one of the reasons why it thrives, but to at the same time provide the answers for some of the questions of who's supposed to do this, or how are we supposed to go about doing this, and have it already laid out and agreed upon.
Thank you. Any other comments in regards to rate communication? Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Catherine.
And so I don't know if you guys had a chance to review or look over them, but in the city ordinance or mandate for general information for commissioners, it does not define roles or or titles and duties of those roles and titles, other than chair and vice chair, and then that the secretary is supposed to be appointed by the city manager. Nor does like the election. Eden, I am on a meeting. Please stop. Nor does it like the election like in January. Nor does it like the election like in January. I was not aware that we typically hold elections in January. It's not written anywhere. I think it came to a surprise to many people. Eden, I go upstairs. Sorry. And so it's not written anywhere. And like it was a surprise that there was election that was supposed to be held in January, given that we just had an election in August. And so again, so these documents, the document here is just some general, it's a running document. It's just some general guidelines or recommendations for some structure or like kind of things that we can adopt so that, you know, people can be better prepared and understand as to how we function and kind of what to expect as the order of operations on the committee.
Commissioner Catherine.
Yeah, just so that we can move on. I'm very, very thankful that Commissioner Davis Dunn kind of wrote this out, and we're going to go back to our little subcommittee on guidance and structure with the response that was given by the city attorney and come up with a little bit better with a more complete picture so that we can maybe vote upon and agree and have a set of guidelines that are agreed upon, not necessarily enforced, because that's not something that we can do, but we can provide some guidelines for future generations. And that's mainly the goal of what Commissioner Davis Dunn and myself are trying to do. So
thank you.
That's all. And sum up, unless Commissioner Davidson has anything else, that's our kind of report of the subcommittee and explanation of this document.
Thank you. Vice Chair Miller, please go ahead.
Did you all, so some of this is specified in the City of East Lansing Board and Commission's handbook that it across, including the procedure for elections, the chair and vice chair role, the recording of minutes by the staff resource person. So I think my hesitation would be setting our own rather than going with what the procedures that is used across the commission. Did you guys look at that or have a rationale for differing from what is common practice across the city? Or are there other commissions that have done this, created their own standards?
Oh, our rationale, we weren't aware. We were just asking questions. We were just trying to figure out, and I think that was some of the conflict I was having as a new commissioner. It's like, all right, what are we doing? How, you know, like our document retention, like, you know, how do we vote, or like who's responsible for this? And so that's not something that I was given in my binder that, you know, I have with me every meeting and that I, you know, I'm constantly referring to. And so we didn't know that it existed. And so that was what our goal. And when we were tasked with trying to, you know, review our ordinance, you know, when we look at the, you know, Human Rights Commission, Human Relations Commission under that ordinance, it didn't define that as to, all right, this is the chair and this is the chair's responsibility, this is vice chair and vice chair responsibility, nor did it have any information around kind of like subcommittee formations or ad hoc committees or kind of like standard practice of the HRC around events and stuff. And so, again, when we start anchoring and looking at this, it just seemed like it didn't exist. And every time we asked questions, you know, based off the historians in this group, it was like, oh, we did that. Oh, we did that. And then it would just like magically appear but if we never asked, we didn't get the information. And so part of my concern is that we relied so heavily on Shelley to be the historian of our commission. And depending on how information is shared or decided within the commission, is not captured in our meetings minutes. And so, I think that, that's kind of how we got there. And so, anyways.
Commissioner Catherine.
Yeah, I just want to thank Commissioner Miller for once again bringing us up to speed on something that we would have loved to know prior. And you didn't know what we didn't know, and we didn't know we didn't know. So that's why we love the input and the conversations. Just like you brought us up to speed with the goals and priorities document that you guys had put together. Because both Commissioner Davis Dunn and I have gone up and down through this binder trying to find answers when only you guys can provide. So we appreciate you servicing this. And just for the sake of time, I did find the on the website. It's called the City of East Lansing Boards and Commissions Handbook, right? I did find it, and as a subcommission, we're going to go over it and see. Okay, so what is already specified, and what are some things that are a little open ended that we could agree upon as a committee.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to item 3.1, old business, commissioner priorities.
Hey, Chuck, just real quick, I want to make a comment. So maybe going forward for all new commissioners, we have maybe an onboarding process or something. Like
that's what we're trying to come up with.
That's exactly what our issue and concern was, and that's what we were trying to do. So thank you, Commissioner Charlie, for saying that. That's exactly what our intent was.
I really like that suggestion in your recommendation and would echo that. And I like, so you put it as the vice chair. I'm like, oh, I can do that. That's a great thing for the vice chair.
And I will say that both Crystal and Catherine started during COVID. I typically meet with the new commissioner before their first meeting. After they've had a chance, we didn't have that opportunity. COVID totally threw everything off. So apologies for that. It's just hasn't been a typical year. You're brand new. Yeah.
Thank you, Shelley. And we know you're doing the best you can. We're going to move on to item 3.1, Commissioner Priorities 2021. And we have the commissioner results of the questionnaire that was submitted, as you guys can all see, about our priorities. This was good. This was great. I like the fact that this was created. It really gave me personally a better feel for what everyone else was thinking. So hats off to the subcommittee that created this and has this as a tool. Did anyone want to make a comment in regards to the results of what we have on here?
Yeah.
Commissioner Cathy, please go ahead.
So sorry, I'm trying to pull it up with the video. There we go. So I would like to make a request. Maybe if the vice chair could look at this and try to find a little bit of a strategy of how we could approach this throughout the year. Being that you guys have, who is interested in doing what, and maybe leading us to finding a way to execute these priorities. So I see that, Shelley, was it you that highlighted the recommend measures to improve human relations, and then formulate and carry out programs for community education, and last one was establish procedures to mediate disputes. So these three that were voted on the most important or priorities. If you guys could have a little meeting or strategy session to think about how you can best lead us into executing that, given people's interests and our priorities. So that would be my request. If you have time, don't want to impose.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I think it's a great opportunity to really, like we talked about in our decision for chair and vice chair, and really we really want to speak for the group. And so this is a tool for that. I can't speak for Vice Chair Miller, but I'd definitely be open to sitting down with her and figuring that out. So I think she's nodding her head yes. So we definitely will take this information and bring it back to the group in regards to what we're thinking and what you guys think about it. Sound good? All right, we'll go ahead and move on if there's no other comments in regards to, for the sake of time. We have item 3.2, we have HRC recommendations to the study committee, independent oversight, basically. And then we have listed under the bullet point social workers at ELP. I did talk with our subgroup that we had in regards to specifically social workers. And please chime in, ladies, if you know, but we will be having a presentation in regards to that topic. We do have some experts coming in to the study committee next week who will be talking a lot about this particular bullet point in a way that I think will complement and not have you be reinvented the wheel and some of the different things that I think you guys really want to focus on. But I'll leave it at that. So please, I'll open it up if you have anything you want to report on that.
I feel like we've kind of talked about this topic quite a bit. So,
all right, and then we kind of really talked about the use of force and where we're at with that, and the whole dynamic of where we're at with that as far as the study committee. And I'll go ahead and move on to item 3.3.
I was just going to say I'm looking forward to the presentation at the study group, which I plan to participate in.
Absolutely. And just for going back to that use of force there, did either one of you ladies get a chance to see the presentation in the study committee that was done in November for the particular use of force presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was so just complimentary of, like Commissioner Ty was talking about, as far as just, you know, reinventing the wheel and duplicating the work. We just really want to make sure we want to utilize you guys' time and our time best way forward. We'll move to item 3.3, 8 can't wait reform policy measures. And as you see, we have the June 9th resolution on there. And then we had the 8 can't wait memo that was presented and incorporated with the East Lansing Police Department. Are there any initial reactions or comments on this particular item?
I think, again, I mean, I wonder, even to the point of our commitment around evaluating the use of force continuum and the use of force policy with the East Lansing Police Department, and this their adoption of the 8 can't wait is even worthwhile reviewing. I think it's something that, again, the study committee or police oversight committee should tackle, because, again, from the findings and observations that from just the video and reports alone, we have not, again,
Am I frozen or is she frozen?
department, but the language in here, you know, requiring de-escalation, again, it's there's no clear policy on de-escalation. There's no standards for de-escalation. You know, they have one staff training for de-escalation. What does de-escalation looks like for police officers? And so they say that they ban chokeholds and strangulation holds and things of that sort. We witness in some of the videos the tackling and them trying to take down. In some videos, we couldn't even clearly see, the positioning of the officer's body, if they were actually had an arm around the neck, and so it's kind of really hard for us to really dive into these things without unfettered access to videos and reports to ensure that the city is meeting the standards of the 8 can't wait, and actually have policies and actual protocols or interventions for officers to help them be more effective in their jobs.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunn. Any other comments or reactions to the document? All right, I'll go ahead and move on to item 4.1, committee reports. And we kind of have covered that already in the presentation that we had from Commissioner Honey, and thank you for doing that. I mean, thank you, Commissioner Dunn, for also working with that. And I just think that we did do some good work in regards to where we're at with that particular item there listed. All right, I'll move on to item 5.1, which we've already done with Councilman Bacon, and under staff reports to item 5.2 for our staff liaisons, Hardy and Newman.
I'll go first, Elaine. Just one thing, a reminder that February is when you wanted to invite ELPD to come in to speak about and present the 2020 complaints. So that invitation has been extended to the chief and the deputy chief, and they have it on their calendar and they will be there.
Yes, Commissioner Miller. Or excuse me, Vice Chair Miller.
Do they have our same sort of written request from the previous year?
I will get with you to make sure they get that detailed request.
Okay.
Yeah, that is very, very important. Thank you, Vice Chair Miller, getting some things written so we can look at beforehand. And it was very, very helpful process, more so than what I've heard about in the past. But outside of that, I'll go ahead and move on if there's not anything else for you guys to report. All right, we are.
Chuck, I was just hoping that I might be able to, I don't have a report, but just remind people that in 2 weeks we'll be observing the MLK holiday. And obviously, because we can't convene this year, we won't have a luncheon with 2,500 people at the Lansing Center. But we will be doing a broadcast on WILX that will air at 7 o'clock p.m. We'll be preempting Jeopardy. I will tell you that I'm very excited about our program. We'll feature many elements of our in-person program, including our symphony. But this year, our keynote is Dr. Bernice King, who, under ordinary circumstances, we would not be able to get on MLK Day. So I'm really just super excited about her sharing this day with us. And so we'll be featuring a conversation between she and I as part of that program. So hopefully, again, you'll join us. You'll tune in to WILX on January 18th at 7 o'clock p.m. for our annual MLK Day of celebration. And it will be shown later on YouTube and some other outlets, but that's our event for that day. And so I'm hoping that you'll join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hardy. I apologize. I didn't see you raise your hand, so I didn't mean to do that to you. I always love to hear you speak when you have a chance to speak about something. So, all right, I'll go ahead and move on to item 6, Commissioner Concerns. Does anyone want to report anything back? Yes, Vice Chair Miller.
I just wanted to make sure that we revisited the meeting time. That's my only concern.
Thank you. All right, let's revisit that real quick and talk about that. We have a 6:30 start time for our meetings, only until we get back into in-person meetings, and then we had previously agreed that we'll talk about that and maybe look at that differently. But as of now, we had voted on a meeting at 6:30, and so I will open it up to anyone who would like to speak on that.
I'll speak. I just like to say I can't remember. I feel like I voted against it just because I knew it wasn't going to work for the 2 months. I mean, they were pretty clear, but not still even on Zoom, it's still being less convenient for them. And even though 7 might not be ideal for all of us, it was working, And so I guess I would, based on what Council Member Bacon informed us of about how that was frustrating to some of the moms in the group, I would venture to say that we should maybe switch the meetings back to 7. I certainly don't want to have a meeting time that's going to be hard for even just 1 or 2 of our members to make. And so I'm 100% absolutely would recommend we go back to 7 o'clock. I don't think there's anybody that can't make 7 o'clock work or that's going to be unduly put out by 7 o'clock. Well, whereas the 6:30 time frame is obviously very challenging for a couple of our members. So, and someone made a suggestion about maybe making the decision that it should be a unanimous decision. That I support that as well. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, you're searching for perfection. We can try.
Yeah, we sure can.
Crystal, was this time difficult for you this evening?
You're muted.
As I previously expressed in the last month's meeting, along with Commissioner McWhorter, that yes, it's very difficult to, especially me being a public health worker, emergency worker, getting off of work at 5:30, having to pick my kid up from childcare to make a regular 6:30 meeting. I understand the compromise was 6:30, but it does make it very difficult for me to like get home, get settled, and organize and prepare, which I was trying to do in the first half of the meeting because of the time crunch.
I think what Karen was alluding to earlier, 7 o'clock seemed to have been working for all of us pretty much anyway. So if 7 o'clock works better for you, Crystal, I would support returning to 7 o'clock as our regular starting time.
Are there any other
It's not
comments?
a motion.
Are there any other? Is
I'll
there?
second that.
That's the motion by Commissioner Cannon to move our meeting times back to 7 o'clock, seconded by Commissioner Catherine to 7 p.m. Is there any other comments, any other discussions on that?
Just an observation that a point about needing to be unanimous in a thing like this is very well taken, and I personally regret that we were not unanimous and feel sorry for the people who felt offended by it. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'll give you a different perspective, but I also have a child, and for me, for example, like tonight, we started at 6:30, and here we are at 9:18. If we would start a little bit later, we would be definitely in the late hours of the night. So I don't mind. I have the flexibility to be able to go to 7 o'clock, but I would really want to talk very clearly to all the commissioners on here to be very mindful of their time and their input when it comes to these meetings, because we do have time as a factor, and to be appreciative to that. And that would be my only concern, because I think right now we have some very open-ended conversations and discussions that sometimes are not as productive as they could be in our general format. So if in fact we do go to 7 o'clock, I just really would like to have all commissioners just really be mindful of their input in regards to the time of their input and their discussion when it comes to us being productive with this 7 o'clock start time. Is there any other discussion? Yes, Commissioner Catherine.
Your preference would be that we talk shorter or faster?
My preference would be for us to just talk in a way that drives to decisions, recommendations, or enlightenment in a way that's productive. So I'm not trying to regulate someone in how much they talk or how less, but really it's difficult sometimes to be able to manage this in a way, because we have such a broad context of information like tonight, where we're meeting for 3+ hours. So we as a group are going to get burnt out. We're going to get a little bit resentful as we go along if we continue having the dialogue that we had tonight ongoing. So, and I don't want to be in the situation where I have to police anyone and what they're doing and how they're communicating and how they're talking, but I also want to be mindful of the long-term effects of what we got going on. Commissioner Catherine, then Commissioner Title, please go ahead.
Yeah, so to that point, Chair, it would be helpful for me if every time we have an item on the agenda, I think you do a really good job at opening up and making sure that everyone kind of feels included. But it would be really helpful for me to figure out what's the point of the conversation that we're having about a document, or what's the end goal of a conversation we're having about the situation. So if there's a document, and instead of asking us, because I wouldn't know, right? Instead of asking us what do you think about this document, is I think that a more pointed question would narrow the scope of our discussion, and it would definitely help me to get to the point quicker, as with the other commissioners. So that would be my recommendation to fulfill what I believe is a common feeling in the commission, that we finish up a little bit faster and we get to the point a little bit quicker.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Commissioner Tyler, please go ahead.
And also in the whole spirit of inclusivity, I think we should limit individuals to having back-to-back comments too. So let the folks to provide comments in as well.
So can you, I hate to put you on the spot, so you're saying that when someone makes a comment and someone else wants to speak, you want to limit that where they're not following
just
up?
allow somebody else to speak instead of the same person keep dominating the conversation.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Normally I run my meetings.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can say this in 20 seconds. My favorite movie is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. There's a scene where John Candy is driving Steve Martin nuts because he is a blabbermouth and talks and talks and talks. And Steve Martin says, I have an idea. The next time you share a story, have a point.
Thank you, Commissioner Cannon, for that. Yes, Commissioner Dunn.
To add other concerns, thank you, Commissioner Catherine, for highlighting that, like the things on the agenda items. As you're opening them up, just very specific about them, and even to the point of how like the bylaw recommendations, like written communications, were posted there. That was a document that was supposed to be for discussion under our subcommittee report, which is not on the agenda. And so again, about formalities and just kind of like order operations, I think those are things that we can adjust and tweak to have a more productive meeting, because it kind of got lost. It was like, oh, did you review them? It was a document that was a discussion and potentially vote on as a part of business of the commission, and that got lost. Even the use of force review documentation, that was a documentation of the use of force subcommittee. That was something that was just supposed to be added on the back end of the agenda packet, because it was something that we had already previously discussed in the other meeting. And so another concern of mine, and what my frustrations have been in trying to figure out how things work here in this commission. And thank you, Shelley, for acknowledging like COVID and everything and kind of how that happened. But even reviewing the handbook online, it does not specify who's responsible for onboarding and ensuring that new commissioners have information and understand that. And then also it talks about that Robert Rules of Order is our order of governance. And so under Robert Rules of Order, when we have discussion, you make a motion, and it's usually a timed motion to have discussion. So you have a 5-10 minute discussion. Once that time is elapsed, then you either make a motion to extend it, or it closes or move forward. So there are numerous ways of conducting a more productive meeting and getting things done. And for me, I've seen the handbook, the binder that I got. So from my limited information, the way that I've engaged with this commission has been based off what I understood as gaps, or opportunities for us to be more proficient in our work. And then again, reviewing the handbook that's on published, it's very generalized, but there are rules of operations there that we are not necessarily adhering to as a commission that would make us much more productive. So that's the only thing that I wanted to express as to kind of where I was coming from and where my frustrations were, because I did not understand what my role was as vice chair of the commission, and how I could support and move these things, so that I felt like collectively our voices were heard, collectively we were moving in one direction, and not that these things were kind of falling out of the sky, and 1 minute we're taking this initiative on, next minute we're taking this on, and we don't know where anything landed. So at that point, that's the only thing that I have to add, and I don't know if we're making a motion to adjourn. But...
All right, so is there any other commissioner comments or concerns in regards to anything they have on their mind? I will talk a little bit. Please go ahead, Commissioner Catherine.
Did we vote on the time change?
No, there was no motion for it.
There was, made by Commissioner Cannon, seconded by me.
Okay.
Oh, that is what a rough comeback for 2021, Chuck Grigsby. All right, let's get back to that. I apologize. I got distracted with that. So anyway, let's get back to that motion on the floor to move our time back to 7 o'clock from 6:30 going forward. And so in the discussion part of what that is and everything, are we under the soft impression that everyone needs to be in unison with that? Or is that just a recommendation and we're going to go with our typical vote? Just for me to have clarification on that.
I think we're just voting tonight, is my understanding.
Okay,
we
so
can talk about whether we want to, try to make it this in the future.
Okay.
One of the ways to get a quick answer to that, Chuck, would be, is there anyone opposed to that motion?
Yeah, I mean, great. Thank you, Commissioner Cannon. Is anyone opposed to that motion at all in regards to having in on that motion that's presented to have us start at 7 o'clock?
Okay.
All right. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? So pass. So Shelley, we we'll get back to 7 o'clock for our meetings going forward. And thank you for catching that, Commissioner Catherine. I can't believe I just left that on the table like that. I think we got into a discussion and I got off track. So going back to item number 6, any other commissioner concerns? I just had one little thing I wanted to say. In our communication outside of our meetings, when we are communicating and we would like to get our information out to other commissioners, I cannot tell you enough how important it is for you to send that communication directly to Shelley so then she can disseminate it out to the rest of the group. When you do a reply all, or when you send more than one commissioner, that's a violation of OMA Act, which is a really, really big deal. You can only get away with violating that so many times before we're in a situation where there's consequences. So just please remember that when you want to communicate and get your message out to the rest of the group, if it's not one-on-one, then you need to please go through Shelley, and then she will get that out in a way that is going to be adherent to our rules. And that's all I have for concerns. And we'll move item to item. I just want to apologize. This is the first meeting that I've had of the year. I was a little bit rough. We had a couple of hiccups in there, and I will get better. I will work on presenting the information that's part of the agenda, which is a very difficult task at hand. I'm still learning a lot as myself in regards to conducting meetings such as this on complicated issues that have a lot of layers to them. So please appreciate that as well. And if there is anything else, I would look for someone to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Honey. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you so much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Have a great evening, guys. We had a great meeting tonight, and I look forward to working with you going forward. What a start. Take care.
Night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Crystal, are those puppies in your house?
Wow. Rough. But, hey, it is what it is. Thanks for joining me tonight, everyone. Appreciate you. Take care. And until next time, take care. Exit out, baby. Get the other one too. Take care, guys. Love ya. Appreciate ya. Let's end the stream.